7 o'clock. Restore Britain has dismissed criticism of its leader, who referred to the Dunblane massacre as one murder. The party says Rupert Lowe clearly meant one incident. It remains the UK's deadliest mass shooting after 16 children and their teacher were killed in 1996. Scottish Tory MSP Stephen Kerr is appalled by his comments on an American podcast.
Children were kept in the gym hall until everyone knew that the gunman was dead. And those children have never forgotten it, nor have the teachers. So to hear Dunblane dismissed as one murder is deeply insulting. It wasn't one murder. It was the mass murder of 16 children and their teacher in a primary school.
Andy Burnham has backed further sanctions against Israeli figures involved in settler violence. The man who is most likely to be our next Prime Minister has apologised for Labour's initial response to the country's actions in Gaza. He's posted a video online.
The UK was too slow to call for a ceasefire, and we must now do more to strengthen our approach. Israel continues to violate the ceasefire agreement, killing innocent Palestinians. We're seeing a surge in settler violence in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and the continued expansion of illegal settlements, displacing Palestinian communities. And Netanyahu's government is clearly attempting to make a two-state solution impossible.
He also condemned the October 7th attacks by Hamas and subsequent acts of anti-Semitic violence in Britain. But former Conservative Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt has told Tonight with Andrew Marr he thinks Mr Burnham is oversimplifying things.
If Keir Starmer had that Love Actually moment that Hugh Grant had and told Donald Trump to get stuffed, it would have made him popular temporarily. I hope this is a sort of bit of an aberration, because I think what I want to see, and this is, I think, the biggest thing we need from a Prime Minister, is someone who persuades us of the need to make difficult choices, not someone who tells us it's all going to be very easy, just let me get my hands on the levers of power.
Iranian state media says the perimeter of one of the country's nuclear plants has been hit by a US projectile. It follows a second night of strikes on Iran, with Washington claiming to have hit around 90 targets. Tehran responded by targeting several Gulf nations, including Bahrain and Kuwait. It's understood Pakistan is unlikely to take back the leader of the Rochdale grooming gang after his release from prison last week. That's despite plans by the Home Secretary to change the law to allow the deportation of Shabir Ahmed from the UK. Bonnie Tyler has been described as an extraordinary woman and one of Britain's greatest recording artists after her death, aged 75. Her family say she passed away in hospital in Portugal last night, where she was being treated for complications from surgery. And England defender Jarell Quansah has been banned for 2 matches following his red card in their last World Cup match. He was sent off for a high challenge during their win over Mexico at the Azteca. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer has hinted if the Three Lions win the World Cup, there could be an extra bank holiday. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 16 points at 10,472. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.17. LBC weather: a mostly dry, clear night with mist and fog in places. Some rain reaching the far northwest by dawn, a low of 12. Sunny and hot again tomorrow. Rain for northwest Scotland, with fog near some coasts and the odd thundery shower possible inland. Highs of 35 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, very good evening. It's 5 minutes past 7 on LBC. We have some breaking news for you. Andy Burnham is effectively now definitely going to be our Prime Minister. I mean, I'm not sure that is breaking news in a way, but he's got the number of nominations that he needs to effectively win the competition today. There are 403 Labour MPs. He's got 322 nominations, which means that nobody else can get the required 81. So you might well ask yourself, well, why doesn't he just become Prime Minister tomorrow then? But he's not due to become Prime Minister until the 20th of July. Why do we have to wait that long? And if we're going to have a new Prime Minister, surely it should be now. Well, Bethany Dawson, political correspondent, has hot-footed it into the studio. Now, we knew that were we expecting him to get all these nominations? Because I was reading earlier that actually the Commons is a bit quiet today, that not many MPs are around. So it's a bit of a surprise that he's already got them.
Today was a really difficult day for them to get this number. It was just empty. There was a one-line whip, meaning that MPs just frankly didn't really need to be there. And the rules on proxy voting meant that, MPs couldn't storm through for their friends. Only one MP can be the proxy for one other MP. So it's quite a surprise that we got all the way through. But they have managed to do it. And now it does mean that no one else can be leader of the Labour Party.
So is there going to be pressure on him to actually take over earlier than originally planned, or do you think they're going to stick to their guns? Because I think they've got a special conference on the 17th of July, so Friday the 17th, and then the idea is that he then takes over on Monday the 20th. Why can't they bring that forward?
Well, this is a good question, and frankly, the answer is really boring. It is because they've booked that special conference in, and because the nominations theoretically have to be open. I suppose you could maybe pull a name. Things just have to happen and the process is rolling. But there is an argument. I was speaking to an MP today who said, he doesn't think that 322 names would be able to be put down today. They've now been proven wrong. But there would be an argument to get it... There would be an argument to get it all sped up so that Andy Burnham could get in number 10. He also, on that point of it being boring, does still have access talks that he needs to do. He still has quite a long to-do list before he can get to be Prime Minister.
But in terms of the fact that they've booked a venue, I mean, they have effectively spaffed £5 million on the Manchester mayoral by-election. So you'd have thought that they could spend, I don't know how much it costs to hire a venue in central London for a morning, 10 grand or whatever. It can't be because of the cost, surely.
Well, I'm sure they could, pop them all in a Wetherspoons or something and sort of get it moving. But again, I think the real question is about what happens with those access talks. Normally, access talks happen when government changes over after an election and the shadow cabinet has meetings across the civil service. Andy Burnham hasn't named his shadow cabinet, so it is just him, his kind of right-hand woman, Louise Haigh, and then his named future Chief of Staff, James Purnell, who are having access talks, and there were a lot to have. So for just 3 people to do that, they kind of do need a
I'm just
week.
Impatient, Bethany.
Oh, me too. I would love to be able to grill the new Prime Minister. I would like a press conference. I would like to see him at PMQs. PMQs, Ian, is going to be very awkward on Wednesday if this isn't sped up.
The Liberal Democrats, in the way that only the Liberal Democrats can, have suggested that PMQs on Wednesday should be extended to allow the presumptive PM to answer questions too. Well, they knew that wasn't ever going to happen.
Yeah, that would be lovely in the way that I'm sure the Lib Dems think it would be lovely. But it's also, I guess he would be the PM. I guess it does, it's really hard when we talk about parliamentary convention. This just is unconventional. This is just a weird thing. I've been rattling through these papers, Ian, because I'm trying to see if Keir Starmer has put his name down to nominate Andy Burnham.
Shall I have a guess? I shall say no, he hasn't.
There you go.
Or has
Doesn't
he?
is no, sorry.
And the first one to nominate him was David Pinto-Dushinsky, who's often on cross-question. Barry Gardner was pipped to the post. He was number 2.
There was some real... what's the right way to put it? There was a tussle, I think, Ian, I've heard from gossiping in Parliament today. There were quite a few people that wanted to be first, to be they could do the little tweet and say that they were first to support the new Prime Minister. But alas, there was only one person that can do that. And as you say, it was David Pinto-Dushinsky.
He was the saddest of them all. I have worked out why Andy Burnham will not be taking over, because if England get to the World Cup final, Keir Starmer, as Prime Minister on Sunday the 19th of July, will want to represent this country. And I say, good on him. I mean, what a way to go out if we won the World Cup on his last full day as Prime Minister.
There was someone that actually suggested to me when this timeline was published and we were all sort of thinking about what everything means, they wondered if Keir Starmer had so specifically made it so that Andy Burnham would be Prime Minister the day after, 1, so he couldn't go to the World Cup match, and 2, so that his final hurrah could be just that fun.
I like the way your evil mind works. Beth. Never do that again. Bethany Dawson, thank you very much indeed. Bethany is our political correspondent. Right, now we are slightly delayed in what we were originally going to talk about, and thank you to our first guest who's staying with us. At least I hope she's staying with us for the next couple of minutes while I explain what it is. Now, Stephen Timms, who is a minister at the Department of Work and Pensions, he's been carrying out a review into disability benefits because many disabled people feel that PIP in particular is not working fairly. So he has carried out this review, which he's published today. And he says that disability benefits are not working for millions of disabled people. Well, they've been telling various governments that for many, many years. And there needs to be fundamental change. Now, people applying for the benefit, particularly PIP, said the process was dehumanising and a barrier to work. Now, Stephen Timms says his final report is going to be published later this year, which presumably will carry some suggestions as to how this should be made to work better. But the thing that stood out to me was that he said, my view is that the current level of spending is not a great concern. I find that odd, I have to say. I don't want to cut disability benefits for disabled people who need benefits, absolutely not. But when you look at the bill, because the previous Conservative government said, look, we've doubled spending on disabled people over the last 15, 20 years. And I looked up the figures earlier, and it is true. In 2005, we were spending £18 billion on disability benefits. We're now spending over £40 billion. Now, you have to factor in inflation into that, but that is still a massive increase. And so we need to understand why there has been that massive increase. But whenever I quote that statistic, when we do phone-ins like this, you then get a lot of people who are on disability benefits ringing in to say, well, we haven't seen any of that. So is it just the case that more people are meeting criteria to qualify as to be described as disabled? Or what is it? Because if the very people that these benefits are meant to benefit aren't benefiting from it, that means that the system is wrong somewhere. 0345 6060 973. Dr. Shani Danda joins me, an accessibility consultant and disability activist. Shani, thank you for coming on, and apologies again for the delay. What do you make, first of all, of the conclusions that Stephen Timms has come to?
Not really a surprise. Many people could have told him that without having to do this report, but nonetheless, it is very validating. It's good to have the research. I guess we just need to wait to see what those reforms and recommendations will be in the autumn.
What would your recommendations be?
My recommendations would include stop reassessing people who have conditions that aren't going to improve. So, for example, if someone's not got any legs, they're not going to grow back. It's a complete waste of money to reassess people.
So someone in that position, how often are they reassessed?
It depends. It's changed now so much. It would depend. It depends on their individual circumstances. Also, the way in which decisions are made are costing the DWP a lot of money. There's a lot of waste because when people go to tribunal to appeal that decision, if they haven't been awarded, over 2/3 of appeals are overturned in the claimant's favour. That's another way to save money. And we need assessors with expertise because if they do, they'll help to make better decisions. And I can't believe I'm the one that's going to bring up the word fraud. But if anyone is trying to be fraudulent, then that assessor will have that specialist knowledge to seek that out better.
As I said, the disability budget, if there is even such a thing, because this covers all sorts of different benefits, not just PIP, it has mushroomed over the last 10 or 15 years. What do you put that down to? Is it that more people are being defined as having a disability? Are there different forms of disability that have emerged over the last 15 years? What is it down to?
Yeah, it's a whole mix of things. I think there's definitely more awareness. So that's one thing that could be driving it. But an important thing to know is just if you've got a diagnosis doesn't mean you'll be eligible for PIP. That's the whole point in having the assessment. And in the assessment, you are scored on how independently you are able to carry out daily activities. They're called, normal daily activities. So what that includes is things like washing yourself, dressing yourself, can you get out of bed, cook yourself a meal. You are scored on all of those things. But I think the real biggest reason is PIP is increasingly being asked to compensate for wider failures. You can't cut your way out of state neglect. If people can't get timely NHS treatment, they can't access rehab or mental health support when they need it, if they can't get social care or workplace adjustments, those needs are only going to become greater. So things like the benefits bill ends up reflecting those failures.
How does our spending on disability benefits in general compare to equivalent European countries?
So from my knowledge, it's low. And the Joseph Rowntree Foundation did some research to show that the state of Social Security doesn't even prevent people from falling into destitution. Destitution is lower than poverty. And when you consider the fact that nearly half of everyone in the UK in poverty is a disabled person or they're a carer, we've got a real problem on our hands if the support that they are getting isn't even meeting their basic needs. And also, the Trussell Trust found that 75% of food bank users come from a disabled household. So I don't think we should be approaching this conversation as it's too generous, because it's clearly not.
Claire on a text here has got one possible explanation for why the bill has risen. She says people with disabilities are finally living longer, which is obviously a good thing. But if you're living for, say, an average of 5 years longer than a disabled, I mean, obviously have to be generalistic here, than a disabled person would have done 20 years ago, inevitably, therefore, that means the cost of the state is going to increase.
Maybe, but I guess that doesn't really account for the avoidable deaths that occur to the learning disability community, for example. So I don't think we could put it down to one specific thing. But yeah, I guess as a general society, we are living longer as a society and a population.
One of the questions I want to put to my listeners for the rest of the hour, I think you're possibly going to answer this in a different way to what I might have expected, given your job description as disability activist. But you seem to hint earlier on in the conversation that you think it is possible to reform the system, but also save money at the same time.
Yeah, I do. Because if you think about it, the way in which the decisions are made about the assessment is largely made by non-disabled people. They're asking disabled people questions that they don't have, knowledge of. I'm sure the majority wouldn't have that kind of lived experience. So I completely agree. It does need reforming, but if we are going to do it, let's take this opportunity to do it properly, because I also believe that we have to provide value for the taxpayer as well. Because another reason that so many more people might be claiming more support is also because of the cost of living crisis. Because what we've got to factor in is that it's very expensive to be disabled. We have, on average, unavoidable extra costs of over £1,000 a month. And if we are eligible for PIP and can claim it, that doesn't offset all of that amount. So, the pressures everybody else is facing are disproportionately affecting disabled people anyway.
Can I say how refreshing it is to talk to somebody who has got a vested interest in arguing for more money, but the way that you've put your case today, you haven't just said, yeah, we need more money, because that's what pressure groups often do. You've actually explained how you think the system can be reformed. So I feel absolutely thrilled that you've come on and taken that stance. Thank you very much indeed. That's Dr. Shani Danda, accessibility consultant and disability activist. So over to you now. If you are disabled, if you're on PIP, how does the system work or how doesn't it work? You're at the sharp end. You'll know far more about this than I can ever possibly know. Give me a call and tell me how it works for you or how it doesn't. And I think that there is this idea that disability benefits are in some way they've mushroomed out of all control, and that they're far too generous. Well, I suspect that most people on PIP would be able to argue that that's absolutely the opposite of the case. So how would you reform disability benefits? Do you think it is possible to reform the benefit system and save money at the same time? It's 7:20.
This is LBC.
Take summer by storm with Kia. Introducing the new Kia Sportage Storm, a unique limited edition of the UK's favourite family SUV. Test drive the award-winning Kia Sportage today and order yours by the 31st of August to get 5.9% APR representative and up to £3,000 PCP finance deposit contribution. Search Kia Take Summer by Storm. Kia. Movement that inspires. T's and C's apply. Kia Finance. To verify, visit kia.com/UK/favourite.
Okay, Laura, from the top.
When your 9-year-old is an unexpected tuber prodigy, and now you want to support her cheek-puffing talent, be a step ahead with Barclays Premier. With personalised financial planning and a dedicated advisor. Barclays, backing your future. Eligibility criteria apply. Investment products and services are provided by Barclays Bank PLC and its subsidiaries. Capital at risk.
This September, the world's top tennis players return to London for the 9th edition of the Laver Cup. From the 25th to the 27th, Team Europe face off against Team World at one of the capital's most iconic venues, the O2. It's your chance to see the biggest names, including Carlos Alcaraz, Alexander Zverev and Ben Shelton, with more to be announced. Get your tickets for an unforgettable weekend of tennis at lbc.co.uk.
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:22. There is a texter called Shane who delights in trying to goad me and texts me sort of quite often. Never has had a complimentary word to say about the programme, but seems to listen nevertheless, which I always find a little odd. He says, OMG, listen to you giving your views an authority again. Shane, open your ears, mate, because I think I went out of my way to say I am not an authority on this subject. I want to hear from people who are on disability benefits. So you can tell me exactly what the situation is and whether you think the system can be reformed in the way that Stephen Timms says. 0345 6060 973. Anastasia is in Leeds. Good evening.
Oh, hello, Ian. Yes, I hope you're well. Now, unfortunately, I mean, I've got cerebral palsy and unfortunately I've got lymphedema. I can't do anything about CP and lymphedema. I've only had that 2 or 3 years, but it's a real nightmare. Now, when it comes to disability, it's important not to conflate. Of course, you're not doing this. You're like me. You're very nuanced. Now, some people conflate disability and a health condition. While I accept health conditions can be very serious, for example, cancer, but this whole business of I'm just gonna say it how it is. ADHD, and I do think it needs reforming. In 1977, I'm going to give you a fact. In 1977, the disability benefit was called mobility allowance, and it was originally for people who had mobility problems, either couldn't walk at all or virtually couldn't walk, just a few steps. Now, the whole thing, I mean, it seems that everyday life circumstances is a disability. I had a blister this morning. That's not a disability. Do you know what I mean? And I just feel infuriated. The most vulnerable people are being sidelined. You can ask me any question you want and you'll get a straight answer. Not everybody answers your questions, I know.
Well, I can tell, but it's interesting that speaking as a disabled person yourself,
Yeah.
What you're effectively saying is that people who have a different form of disability, like ADHD, you don't think that all of them should qualify for these kind of benefits?
Absolutely. And coin a phrase from yesterday, Paul Dacre, some people take the biscuit, some people take the tin, and some people take a biscuit factory. And I absolutely...
I wonder what you were going to say then. I'm greatly relieved you ended with the factory. Anastasia, thank you very much indeed. Now, Devon Galani is director of the Policy in Practice think tank, who is one of the architects of the Universal Credit Welfare System. Devon, very good evening. What's your reaction to the conclusions of Stephen Timms' review?
Well, I think this is an interim report, and I think it says things that more or less we knew at the start. It talks about the problems of personal independence payment. And we all know that anyone who's been through the system, anyone who's got any context of the system knows that it's a system that doesn't work for taxpayers, doesn't work for disabled people, doesn't work for, there's lots of friction in there. So a lot of people have their decisions overturned on appeal. And I think what this says is partly what we already knew, and what we're waiting for is the next part of this process, where we get some sensible proposals of how the system might change so it does work better for disabled people, for taxpayers, and for those responsible for administering it.
Is it possible to reform this system and save money at the same time? Because Stephen Timms seems to be remarkably unconcerned about the amount of money being spent on disability benefits.
Well, I think that was kind of explicitly out of the scope of the review. So it's looking at how the system itself can be reformed without having a savings target attached to it, which was one of the problems when the changes to disability benefits were first proposed by the government only 2 years ago. It's all gone by very quickly, hasn't it, Ian? I think it is possible. I think the biggest driver of cost in the disability system is the number of people that are needing support has been going up, and it's been going up faster than the main explanations, which are things like people getting older, a higher rate of disability across the population as a result. The pace of application of disability benefits has been going up faster than that. So that's the question to ask and answer. And it could be that, as we just heard from your caller, maybe the scope of disability has increased, but actually the assessments themselves haven't changed. It's saying actually what does your disability stop you from being able to do? And if I had one simple reform to the system that I would make to sort of stop this from continuing to go up and up, I would be asking people, what support do you need to stay independent for longer? So what we've got is a system whereby the cost of disability is an ongoing cost. It keeps going up and up and up. And actually what sometimes people need, if you're having difficulty washing yourself, maybe you need a different kind of bathroom, and that's a one-off cost that allows you to stay independent for longer. And actually that could be better for the taxpayer, could be better for the disabled person because they're living independently for longer. Taxpayer isn't paying these ongoing costs. And what we've ended up with is an assessment system that almost asks people, makes people almost talk about how little they're able to do for themselves in order to access the support that they often very genuinely need, rather than saying, actually, what do you need to live independently for as long as possible? So those are the kinds of reforms that policy practice.
And is PIP totally independent of how much you earn? So you could be on £90,000 a year, but you would still be entitled to PIP, or is that separate?
Yeah, so it's entirely non-means tested. So it's there to overcome the additional cost that people with disability face. So there's a model of disability that says, actually, it's society that's disabling you because you don't, the adaptations aren't there for you to be able to get around without that. And that's partly the original rationale for when this support for disabled people was introduced. There's a really strong case for that. But I mean, if you didn't feel people on higher incomes should get as much, there's a case for also means testing, things like personal independence payment, or bringing it into making it taxable, for example, so they'd be paying tax back on it. But that does actually also complicate the system a fair amount as well. So you need to be careful about things like that. And there's a strong case for recognizing that there are these additional costs of disability that people face. I mean, the additional costs don't change almost regardless of the income that you're on. Obviously, they do change somewhat because you can afford some of those adaptations yourself.
Devon, thank you very much indeed for joining us on LBC. That's Devon Galani, their Director of the Policy in Practice think tank. Let me tell you who's on Cross Question from 8 o'clock. Luke Charters, Labour MP for York Outer. Suzanne Evans, political commentator, former Deputy Chairman of UKIP. Daniel Kowczynski, International Affairs Consultant, former Conservative MP. And the broadcaster and podcaster Gemma Forte. They will be here from 8 o'clock. We'll take more of your calls in just a moment. It's 7:30 on LBC. News headlines with Amelia Cox.
A total of 322 Labour MPs have formally backed Andy Burnham to be the next party leader on the first day of nominations. If no one else enters the contest, as expected, Mr Burnham will be declared Labour leader next week before taking office as Prime Minister on the 20th of July. The leader of Restore Britain is facing a backlash after referring to the Dunblane massacre as one murder. The party says Rupert Lowe clearly meant one incident while discussing Britain's deadliest mass shooting on an American podcast. And England defender Jarell Quansah has been banned for 2 matches following his red card in their last 16 tie against Mexico. He was sent off in the 53rd minute on Monday for a high challenge. LBC weather, mostly dry, clear night with mist and fog in places. Some rain reaching the far northwest by dawn, a low of 12 degrees.
This is LBC.
Octopus Energy is now Britain's biggest energy supplier, trusted by over 8 million customers, because we do things differently. When you call, you'll speak to a real person. No robotic scripts, no computer says no, just an honest conversation with someone who actually wants to help. Join the millions who've already made the move. Octopus Energy, recommended by Which? A record 9 years running. Visit octopus.energy/better for verification.
Psst. Hey dogs. Yeah, I'm talking to you. If you're tired of dry, tasteless kibble or slop that plops out of a tin, you're going to want to hear this. Butternut Box makes only the freshest dog food with juicy meat and tender veg. It's the kind of food that makes dogs, tongue out, running around the kitchen happy. Let's hope your human heard this too. Butternut Box. Fresh food, happy dogs. Try Butternut Box today and get 25% off your first 2 boxes. Offer available online in the UK and Ireland to first-time customers only.
A message from TfL.
I saw him in the local news a few days after. His name's Rakesh. They had to put him into a coma just because I didn't look again at that turning. He had 2 kids. How did I not see his bike ahead of me? Well, I didn't look again. He didn't make it.
Drivers, take another look, not a life. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
7:32. We're talking about the disability benefit system, in particular PIP. Stephen Timms, who's Minister for Disabled People, he's issued his review today, or the initial findings of the review. And he has said, I think quite controversially, that he's not worried about the amount of money we're spending on disability benefits. Well, given the financial situation that the country is in, if the system isn't working, if it isn't efficient, as he admits it isn't, surely, therefore, we ought to be looking for savings in that, making sure, of course, that they don't affect disabled people who really need those benefits. Have I got that wrong? 0345 6060 973. I particularly want to hear from you if you are on PIP and if you've had to navigate the benefit system if you're a disabled person, and what the difficulties you found in it. Or maybe, I mean, I'm sure for some people it's working perfectly fine, but I think for a lot of people it certainly isn't. That's certainly been the experience of phone-ins that I've done on this over the last few years. Sal is in Paddington. Hello, Sal.
Good evening. Just before cross questions, I'm going to give you some rather cross answers, if I may.
Go
on. So the reason that Stephen Timms said what he did is because when it comes to the actual percentages of spending on welfare, disability benefits, which include PIP, and PIP is, I repeat, is not an out-of-work benefit, accounts for 14.2% of the budget, whereas the triple lock and pensions account for over 42%. So when he's
hang on a second, because I think the flaw in that argument, and I'm going to accept your figures, but the flaw in that argument is that, pensions are not really considered benefits. Now, I agree with you on the triple lock. I think you probably agree on the triple lock.
They still come out of the same budget, and when it
they come out of the same department's budget.
Yes,
but if you
the issue,
no, but
that's on the profit and not that they have a profit and loss, but basically on the spending. When we look at it, that accounts for a large amount of what is under the figures of welfare spending. On top of that,
no. I'm going to push back on this, because I haven't got the percentages of what percentage of the DWP budget pensions take up. But if you take that out of it, that 14.2% that you've just quoted will go up probably to about 25 to 30%.
Right, and also with that, the reason that it has gone up as dramatically and as quickly as possible is because over the past year and a half, we finally got all of the people who had been in receipt of DLA, which was a previous disability benefit, and accounted for an awful lot of young people and children whose parents received DLA on their behalf. They finally finished the migration from one legacy benefit, as they call it, to the new one, which accounts for a large chunk of the massive increase in numbers. Because actually, as a proportion of the population that are registered as disabled, actually, mental health has grown as a chunk of the disability numbers. Actual percentage of the population hasn't actually gone up all that much over the past 25 years. It is just the type of disability that is being reported and how that is now being kept in figures. When it comes to PIP spending, it is ridiculous that over the course of 7 years, the department has spent over £350 million challenging decisions that are then found by tribunal to be incorrect. Now, this is something that I have gone through twice myself, and I think that it is outrageous that when you've already addressed an issue and had a tribunal that has made a decision on a matter of substance, that the next time that you are up for review, the people who are writing the report get to see the outdated version of that report that the tribunal should have superseded, and don't see any decisions by the tribunal itself. And I have that in black and white from both the healthcare professionals, the outside third-party assessors, and the Department for Work and Pensions, who basically said, no, if you want the medical assessment team to take into account what the tribunal said, you should submit that in your evidence. Now, if you've gone through the system and a tribunal has found in your favour, why would you think that the next people who are reviewing your case wouldn't be seeing that information?
Well, I'm going to leave that question hanging. I haven't got an answer to it, I happily admit. Thank you very much indeed, Sal. Steve says that the calculation that Sal made is wrong. PIP is not taxable, while the state pension is. And somebody else has been talking about the fact that the rich are milking PIP. I think it is not right. If somebody is on a very, very high salary, why would they either A, claim PIP, or why would they be entitled to claim PIP? I don't think our benefit system should enable that to happen. I suppose you could argue, well, if it's more or less a universal thing that isn't means tested, you haven't got the complexity of a means testing system. But I think any benefit system actually needs to enjoy the confidence of the population. And at the moment, I think as Stephen Timms himself has said, it just doesn't. And I think things like that play into that. Right, let's go to Alex, who's a new caller in Norwich. Hello, Alex.
Hello.
Hi. What would you like to say?
Pretty much I am watching you, and I do agree with the majority of the stuff you're saying. So like I was saying, so from a working life throughout 2021, December the 6th of 2021, I then had a subarachnoid cerebral hemorrhage and was comatose and then rushed down to Addenbrooke's in Cambridge and all that. And then anyway, so I had a PIP review this March, and I lost my mobility because they seem to think that apparently as a stroke person, which I had, having a massive bleed on the brain, that I can do 200 metres. And the whole thing is just corrupt and just broken and just... well,
is that one of the criteria to get a Motability vehicle? You have to be able to...
You can only do up to 0 to 50 metres to qualify for that. But if anything more than 50, then you don't really qualify on that part.
And your contention was that you couldn't do that?
I couldn't when I had the hemorrhage, granted, but I have a quad stick because obviously my right side, because I had a stroke on my right side from a bleed on the brain. So it's taken a massive toll on my life, but the DWP seem to think that I can do 200 metres, which I can't do. So...
See, I mean, that is a flaw in the system, isn't it? When you have got to... I mean, surely it's up to them to prove that you can't, that you can do 200 metres. I don't know how they would do that, but it's kind of... It's your word against theirs, isn't it?
So with that, yeah, I hear what you're saying. So I obviously wanted a mandatory reconsideration and they declined that. And then the next step is to tribunal it, which I have now put in for as of in May. I'm still waiting on DWP's response, and I've got to wait till the 14th, which is next Tuesday, I believe.
Tuesday, yeah.
Because this is absolutely just... You got to see where I'm coming from. Like, from a working life, doing days and nights and pizza deliveries and stuff, to then now having to sign on to DWP, you know, to now living a life of literally nothing. I'm not gaining anything from this. I preferred the working life than this. So
how much has... I mean, obviously you've gone through a difficult time because of the stroke, but you're also, it seems to me, from what you're telling me, you're going through a pretty difficult time navigating your way through the system. The system is not helping you, which it's there to do. I mean, no one, from what you've told us in this phone call, nobody could accuse you of trying to fleece the system. I mean, you are the kind of person that the system should be designed to help, and it's not, and that's the problem, isn't it?
That's what I'm saying, mate, and it's what really winds me up. I don't know, it's something that needs to be done properly because, like I say, people are just easily just signing on because the government just don't care. Labour don't care. Conservative don't care. I don't even think Reform are going to do much of it. All they're on about is immigration all the time. You know, it's just, I don't know, mate, it's just, I don't know.
Can you let me put a text to you that Michael has sent in? He says, this is regarding your comments on the Motability qualification. Michael says, are you going to give a Motability car to anybody who just says that they can't do 200 metres?
I don't even know how far 200 metres is, let alone 50. So I can't even do 200 metres. Like I said, I don't even know how far that is. But just what I'm saying is that the DWP seem to think that I can do 200 metres even with a stroke, which I'm still dealing with.
So you've appealed it?
I am. This is why it's now going to a tribunal.
We see somebody at Shibley has just texted in saying the descriptor for PIP is 20 metres, not 200 metres. But that's PIP rather than Motability, I suppose. See, this is where it gets complicated. For anybody not involved in making claims themselves, this is where whenever we talk about this kind of subject, I feel completely inadequate because I've never been through this system and I can't imagine what it must be like to navigate it. There must be ways of making it simpler, though.
Oh, no,
Well, Alex, I can hear how frustrated you are. I mean, have you tried to get help from, I don't know, your local council or local MP to try and help you get through this?
I've tried Clive Lewis, Norwich South. He's like a fart in the wind. But he's useless. I mean, they're meant to help people like with this, and I've had nothing. I've had people down down a gym that I go to, they're called Able to Be, that helps with people who have disabilities, funny enough. And someone called Rachel Hutchings, I can't remember, I can't say her last name, but yeah, she's helping me out quite a lot. I've been going to a solicitor.
Citizens Advice are really good on stuff like this. I mean, if you haven't tried them, I would certainly have a go with them. Alex, I wish you luck, because the system should be there to help you, and it clearly isn't at the moment. Keep your calls coming, 0345 6060 973. A text here, which is from Neil, who says, whilst most people likely believe a full root and branch overhaul of the benefit system is needed, it seems to have historically been too toxic for any of the political parties to do anything other than tinker around the edges. I understand why you say that, Neil, but universal credit was introduced when Ian Duncan Smith was DWP secretary, and I mean, obviously that was a fairly controversial thing to do. Anyway, Neil continues, I hope Burnham has the ability to do something more meaningful while still ensuring support and safety nets are in place, maybe even strengthened for those who truly need them. Well, hallelujah to that, Neil. I think virtually everybody listening would want that to be the case, that you certainly want to have a system that helps the people that really do need it most. But I wonder whether it has been widened so much that it's helping, in inverted commas, too many people, which may sound a bit of a crass thing to say in some ways. I mean, how can you help too many people, people will say. Well, there are forms of disability which I think a lot of politicians are questioning as to whether they should be described in that way. We hear a lot, and various politicians from different political parties, I think Wes Streeting himself has said this, that maybe that ADHD and autism are being diagnosed far too much. I'm not going to take a position on this because I'm not medically qualified to do so. And I think it's very odd when politicians themselves take it upon themselves to say things like this. But maybe that's something that the system needs to look at. It's 7:46 on LBC.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
By leader of that Rochdale grooming gang, the Home Secretary supposedly as soon as Monday to table new legislation which means he could be deported. Mallet in Leicester.
For the mistakes of few people or for the crimes of few people.
I don't know if it is a few people, actually. I think, sadly, there's probably more of it going on than we imagine.
Let's say 1,000. Society has actually thrown
No, Mallet, no, sir. Nothing is an excuse for the behaviour that those girls endured. Nothing excuses that. Whether they were from a care home or whether they were from a mansion. Nothing excuses the behaviour of that man. Don't try and find some kind of rationale.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Greetings, I am Genetron 3000, and these are my companions, Mark IV and Kavraknar. We have travelled to your planet to seek the great leader. Pray tell, where may we find him?
Your great leader's signing autographs up there on the left. Enjoy Brighton Comic Con.
Download the Southern Railway app to explore not-so-distant galaxies by train, with advance fares from £8 on off-peak journeys. Southern Railway, where every stop is a story. Terms apply.
Visit thebirthdaydraw.com for a chance to win £1 million. Why should you enter? Hello? £1 million. In fact, the birthday draw is the only weekly draw where you can win £1 million for just £1. Enter before midnight on Sunday from as little as £1 or via post. Is it your lucky day? From Global and ITV. T&Cs apply. 18 plus UK only. No purchase necessary. Verify at thebirthdaydraw.com/verify.
In a world full of noise and uncertainty, IG is the investment platform that backs you. Forget the dubious tips from that guy down the pub. Get real-time insights, analysis and tools. No more fat cat brokers clawing your gains. Pay zero commission on your investments. Switch to a platform trusted by British investors for over 50 years. IG. Trade, invest, progress. Your capital's at risk. Other fees may apply.
This September, the world's top tennis players return to London for the 9th edition of the Laver Cup. From the 25th to the 27th, Team Europe face off against Team World at one of the capital's most iconic venues, the O2. It's your chance to see the biggest names, including Carlos Alcaraz, Alexander Zverev and Ben Shelton, with more to be announced. Get your tickets for an unforgettable weekend of tennis at lbc.co.uk. lbc.co.uk.
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:49 on LBC. Don't forget cross question 8. We are looking forward to your questions on 0345 6060 973. John is in Luton. Hi, John.
Hi there. Great subject. I qualify for benefits because I was diagnosed a year ago with multiple sclerosis, having worked all my life as an international sales manager. So a bit of a shock. However, I'm really grateful for the NHS. They've really done really well for me. I get PIP, I get various benefits. So for me, it's working. But the daft thing is, and this is what I find amazing, that Richard Branson or the new Prime Minister could get PIP.
Yeah.
And that's where the government has lost the plot. The other thing is I have the benefit of insider knowledge on the NHS. My partner is a top nurse, and so this is great for me, but bad for other people. She showed me how to get to the top neurologist in Europe, and she took me to him. I paid a relatively small amount of money, and he got me onto treatment that I wasn't going to be given on the NHS. The daft thing is because I'm English, I wouldn't qualify for that medicine. If I was Welsh, I would. If I was Scottish, I would as well. So we've got a crazy system where, depending on where you live, if you're British or if you are, and the reason is that all the English will use this medicine to get better and they can't afford it. So the whole thing's, there is an awful lot of thinking through. It's got to be done, to be honest, Iain. But I am grateful for what I've got. And it's working for me, but the other thing I was going to say briefly, there's an awful lot of people I know who are defrauding the system. One thing is depression. It can be anything you want. You can tell your doctor, sign you off depression, you get onto PIP. ADHD, same thing. I know a guy, very bright, very intelligent, wasting his life, and really annoys me. 34 years old. I've tried to get him jobs. He said, I just can't handle it. He spends all day in the pub. You're telling me that's not a waste of a person's life?
Well, it is. And I'm afraid, this is going slightly off the subject. And we're going to be talking a bit more. We're actually going to talk about the importance of Saturday jobs to teenagers as a way of getting used to working. And those jobs just don't exist anymore. And I think that's part of the whole NEET problem. And if people get used to not working, and if they're being paid effectively not to work, and they're getting enough in benefits that they can survive, there's no incentive to get back into the world of work, is there?
No, there isn't. And this person, I could multiply. He's probably one of several thousand at least who have realised the system can prop you up. The NHS is under too much pressure to examine how credible these applicants are. So it's easy for doctors to sign people off. They're under too much pressure themselves. So we've got to do a lot of thinking. But I think it's bananas that Richard Branson can get PIP. I'm sorry.
Well, and then we have this ludicrous announcement by Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, to say, as if we aren't spending enough on benefits, we're now going to fund people who are unemployed to have childcare. Have you ever heard of anything so preposterous?
I just hope Andy Burnham. I worry about Andy Burnham because I just worry that he's going to drift toward. I'm not anti-Labour, at all, but I just think he could cave into the left wing of the Labour Party and sign off everything. We need someone like a type of Margaret Thatcher that says, "Come on, guys, you're British. Let's get to work. You've had a bad day. If you feel a bit depressed, get to work. There's nothing like working just to make you feel valued."
I couldn't agree more. John, thank you very much indeed for a great call. Kate is a new caller in Burton-on-Trent. Welcome, Kate. What would you like to tell us?
Okay, so I've been listening to your conversation and there's been all sorts of interesting things coming up. I want to talk a little bit about what I've been through with PIP. So I have 2 lung diseases as well as some neurodevelopmental disabilities. So I'm both physical and I also have some other things that a lot of people are saying they're contesting, is this even a disability anymore?
Just before we go on, what is a developmental disability? Just define that for us.
A neurodevelopmental disability is something like ADHD or autism. So you're born with it. You can't be cured by therapy. There's sometimes no medication that treats it. I have specific learning disabilities, so I have dyscalculia, which is an inability to basically comprehend numbers at all. I'm effectively innumerate. And I also have things like a coordination disorder called dyspraxia, which makes me unusually unbalanced. I'm always bumping into things, hurting myself, stuff like that. And I have ADHD as well. So, hi, I'm one of those people that you guys love to talk about. Let's go. My thing with it is I've been unable to keep a job for very many, or I was at least unable to keep a job for very many years. I've been drifting through the wilderness for a very long time. I've been trying volunteering, trying to get work experience. I was getting older and older and older. It's getting harder to get interviews and things like this, and employers were not interested. And eventually I had to start claiming because I just couldn't, I was doing gig economy work, I just couldn't sustain my life anymore. It was getting too hard to pay for stuff. The rent was going up increasingly, things like this. So I applied for PIP, and I had an assessment that I believe might actually be some kind of record. So I searched for a person who could beat my record, but I was kept in an assessment for 5 hours without a break. I wasn't allowed to leave, basically, or because if I did, they would just say, no, you don't get any money at all. I wasn't allowed drinks, I wasn't allowed to go to the...
5 hours? What were they doing for 5 hours?
Just for the record, I have actually recorded the entire 5 hours, so I do have proof of that. That's important for me mentally, honestly. But they were just asking me questions, endless questions, like, why had I failed to kill myself?
What?
They do this. I'm not going to be the only. You ask people.
Come on. They must have worded that differently. I mean, there's no way that they could ask that.
No. I promise you, look into this. I absolutely swear blind to you, look into this. You will find people talking about this in whatever. They do ask sometimes in different ways. They say it's a safeguarding question because they say that it's about how much of a risk you are. So if you have ever had a suicide attempt, they ask you why you failed. And I'm not lying to you. I swear to you that. And you can find evidence of people talking about that online. That is a thing that happens. So I was put under a microscope and dissected layer by layer for like 5 hours. And then after that, I did qualify, thankfully. And then the little things that I did to try and help myself when I would go to things like job centres for other things was used against me as evidence that I could do activities that I couldn't do, which is why I can't trust when people say, oh, we're going to help the people that genuinely need it, we'll protect them, because people don't always believe me that I can't do things I genuinely medically can prove I can't do. I have evidence. I've been tested. I have the receipts effectively. I can't do these things. But people will look at me and they'll say, oh, you're very articulate. You can't have a learning difficulty. I genuinely am enumerate, and I can prove that I am effectively. It's not entirely, but it's very close. They said I could manage my money, but my intellectual disability I have, or damage to my brain in some way and how it processes numbers, literally means I can't. I have to have someone to help me with money and bills. I can't give you the correct change. I can't get on a bus and pay with hard cash effectively and know if they've given me the right change. I can't work in any kind of retail because I can't understand the numbers on the till because they jumble up, it gets confusing and things. So I've been locked out of lots of different kinds of work. The one type of work I can do is then really hard to get, because it turns out I'm quite good at some things in academia. It's really hard.
Well, I'll tell you what, Kate, you're very, very good at talking. You're very, incredibly, given what you've said about your conditions prior to this, you're incredibly articulate, and you can use that to your advantage, surely.
What job could I get other than yours, I'm being for real. What job can you think of right now where all I need to do is talk?
Teach.
That you can just go into. They won't hire me because I don't have the ability to properly interact with words in the written form and math. I can't teach because I don't qualify I don't qualify as a volunteer for that because I can't help a kid.
All I'm saying to you is if you went for a job interview and you talk in the way...
I don't get hired.
Well...
I'm telling you, I don't get
All
hired.
I'm saying is if I was interviewing you for a job and you were speaking in the way that you've spoken to me now, I mean, I suppose it depends what the job is. And you're right to say, well, what jobs are there where you need to use your articulacy predominantly? Well, I can't sit here and immediately quote 10 jobs that you could do, but I'm sure that there are many out there if you can identify the areas that you should be looking into. Kate, I could talk to you for a long time, but time has beaten us. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up in the next hour, it is Thursday's Cross Question with Luke Charters. He is Labour MP for York Outer. He was one of the first to nominate Andy Burnham today, keen as mustard. Suzanne Evans is political commentator, director of the public affairs consultancy Political Insight, and also former deputy chairman of UKIP back in the day. Daniel Kovczynski was a Conservative MP back in the day. He's now an international affairs consultant. And Gemma Forte is a broadcaster and co-host of the podcast The Trawl. They will be trawling through your questions and answering them, hopefully, in the next few minutes. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock. On the first day of nominations, 322 Labour MPs have backed Andy Burnham to be the party's next leader. He only needs one more to guarantee no one can stand against him. The Unite Union has also conditionally backed him, but they say he must lead a government that fights for workers and communities and deals with the crippling cost of living crisis. But speaking to LBC last week, Andy Burnham said he knows how to stimulate growth.
I was in the Treasury. I ran the Department of Health, and we had it was tight, but we had a very healthy set of finances. I've run Greater Manchester, the fastest growing city region in the country, for a decade. And you can't make it the fastest growing city region in the country without strong business confidence.
Restore Britain says its leader Rupert Lowe was clearly referring to one incident when he claimed the Dunblane massacre was one murder. 16 children and one teacher were killed in the deadliest mass shooting in British history in 1996. Mr. Lowe was speaking to an American podcast about gun laws at the time. Iranian state media says the perimeter of one of the country's nuclear plants has been hit by a US projectile. It follows a second night of strikes on Iran, with Washington claiming to have hit around 90 targets. Tehran responded by targeting several US bases, including in Bahrain and Kuwait. Former US State Department official Nate Swanson says the development is worrying but unsurprising.
Iran may not be interested in doing the type of deal the US is looking for. How do we, I think from the president's perspective, rechange Iran's calculus, or at least set this on a trajectory to have more positive negotiations? And he seems to believe that it's through more kinetic action, but that's very risky in my mind.
The man accused of stabbing 10 people on a train in Cambridgeshire will stand trial later this year. 33-year-old Anthony Williams has denied attempted murder following the attack on an LNER train from Doncaster to London in November last year. And the extreme heat has caused more problems across the UK. Britain's electricity grid operator says it will need more power as it comes under pressure from people using fans and aircon. Some train services are also affected. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down 16 points at 10,472. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.17. LBC weather, a mostly dry, clear night with mist and fog in places, some rain reaching the far northwest by dawn, a low of 12 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
I've looked after my kids since they were born. Now they've got kids. I still want to look after them. I don't want them struggling to make decisions about my money or my health if I can't. So we made a lasting power of attorney. Now, if I can't speak for myself, they'll speak for me. It's a weight off for all of us, isn't it?
Yes, Mum. Lasting power of attorney. Search your voice, your decision.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, very good evening. It's 3 minutes past 7. Welcome to Thursday's Cross Question here on LBC. Let me introduce my panel to you. Sitting to my left is Gemma Forte, broadcaster and co-host of the podcast The Trawl. Next to her is Luke Charters, Labour MP for York Outer. To my right, Suzanne Evans, political commentator and director of the public affairs consultancy Political Insight, and of course, former deputy chairman of UKIP. I mean, when was that? 10 years ago now?
Ages ago now.
Should we delete that from your job description? And to her right, Daniel Kowczynski, international affairs consultant and former Conservative MP. They're here to answer your questions on 0345 6060973. You can WhatsApp on that number as well. You can text 84850, and you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, and the LBC YouTube channel.
0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Right, let's start off with the text question from Chris, who says, have Labour MPs made a mistake in waving Andy Burnham through to Downing Street, I thought he was going to say to judges' houses there, and not submitting him to any kind of challenge? Well, Luke Charters, I gather you were like fifth in line this morning to nominate him, according to the... Sixth. Why so keen?
Well, I was going off to do a speech. I mean, I was going off to do a speech at CBI, but I think... We've been in this predicament of losing elections all this time, and Andy proved this secret formula that we can beat reform. And today, in that long spiralling queue of MPs, there was just that feeling of a bit of optimism, that hope. And look, it's no surprise that it's been a good but difficult few years for Labour MPs in some senses. But there was unity. It was MPs from the left, from the right, Scots. There was a Cornish MP just behind me in the queue. It was just bringing people together. And that smooth transition, a calm, collected transition to a new Prime Minister, isn't that what people really want?
Some people will absolutely want that, but others might look back to the example of Theresa May, who became Prime Minister before she was expecting to in 2016 when Andrea Leadsom pulled out, which meant that she didn't have to go through a leadership election. She wasn't challenged, she wasn't ready, she didn't have her policies ready, and you kind of get the impression that maybe history might be repeating itself here.
Well, I think you'll know and you'll agree with me that Makerfield, what a colossal seismic moment it was in British politics. That was a massive test. And I knocked on all of those doors of people who voted reform literally like a couple of weeks before, and they were back in Andy's column. That was a massive test. The media spotlight, the need to speak to tens of thousands of voters, the campaign he ran, the built on optimism, that was a colossal test and proved a new blueprint for how we can beat reform. We'd been ruled out of the running for ages.
That's not kind of what I asked, though, because we don't know, none of us know, I mean, you may do, because I know you're quite close to his campaign people, but we don't know what his views on foreign policy are.
Did you read the Times?
I have read the Times, but I mean, it doesn't tell us an awful lot. His speech last week, it was a good rhetoric, but there wasn't a lot of meat to it.
A lot of detail in there about devolution,
really?
number 10 in the North Office of the Prime Minister, quite specifics. If you want to go policy, neat nerd detail on what was in that speech, 45-day work placements, working with employer partners, devolved mayors and authorities to get workplace back for those not in education, employment or training. Look, we can really take the next couple of weeks to learn more about some of the detail, but he was already very clear that the rewind of the state is devolution.
Suzanne, I could hear you chuntering to my right.
I watched that speech with my next door neighbours, and we all sat there at the end of it and said, well, what's he going to do? Because there was absolutely no... Actually, one of my neighbours was a bit ruder about it than that. But there was no detail whatsoever. We don't know what Andy Burnham stands for. And I can't think of a single time... I mean, what is this now? 7 Prime Ministers in 10 years. And I can't think of a single time when one of those Prime Ministers wasn't elected, when the Labour Party didn't kick up an absolute stink and say, this is anti-democratic, there should be an election. And now suddenly, because it's one of theirs, it's all fine. And we can see through it. Luke, people can see through it.
Well, to be fair, the chair was
such hypocrisy that before you opposed, Theresa May coming in, Boris Johnson coming in, Liz Truss coming in, Rishi Sunak coming in, and now it's fine. It's a lovely, smooth transition. Well, I think the electorate feel very differently, particularly because Andy Burnham didn't stand on any kind of manifesto, and he's going to be crowned Prime Minister, and we really don't know what he stands for. May
I just very briefly say the difference with like Liz Truss, right? Was that she put the Tory manifesto at the time in the rearview mirror. One example of fiscal
hasn't done
rules.
That with Labour.
And what Andy has actually said, if I may, if that's all right, the manifesto that I was elected on, to be fair, that's paramount. That's not going to change with Andy. That was the difference with Liz Truss.
But if it's not going to change with Andy, this is the weakness in the argument, isn't it? If it's not going to change, what's the point?
Because there's things that we can do to deliver on top of the manifesto. Like, for example, in the manifesto we talk about devolution in quite broad terms. We've had a very specific set of ideas just last week on how we achieve that. So it's a build on the manifesto. It's not detonating it like Liz Truss did, to be fair.
Gemma?
I'm cautiously optimistic. I do know that everybody who's opposed to Labour is going to spend the next however many years saying he hasn't got a mandate. That will be the argument. Obviously, we had
But Suzanne's argument is valid, isn't it? Because Labour was saying that about, I mean, you can produce all of the quotes of David Lammy, Bridget Phillips and all of them saying there should be a general election back in 2023.
Yeah, and that's why they are now going to have that back, and that is going to be a problem for them. But within the system, the point is the government at the time get to say, shut up, this is what's happening. And that's what Labour will do. However, they cannot do it again. And everybody has got to coalesce behind Andy Burnham if they want to keep Labour in and have any kind of chance at the next election, because people won't tolerate any more change. It has just been, it destabilises the country every time. For that reason alone, I'm quite glad there's not going to be a long, drawn-out contest that gets really, really draining for everybody. And I personally thought the speech was bold, given that he's not in yet. I mean, goodness knows, poor man, what he's about to take on. Would you want to do it? I certainly wouldn't. And I think he probably hopes that he gets a couple more weeks. I know this big event is booked in a couple of weeks, and I think he's probably got no wish to change that. He's got to get all his ducks in a row as quickly as possible.
I bet he does, because let's say England get to the World Cup final. If he could become Prime Minister a bit earlier, he could go to it. Daniel?
Well, I think it was mentioned that he's very popular in Makerfield, and this will be fantastic news for the Labour Party. But let's not forget, he's just been spending money. It's very easy to spend money. As the mayor of Manchester, he's been taking money from the Exchequer and he's been splashing it around his area. So he's popular. But being Prime Minister is much more than just splashing money and spending money. The other thing is that he has already lost twice to be leader of the Labour Party, and I think we should take that into consideration. Twice the members and members of Parliament of the Labour Party have rejected him, and I think one of the reasons they rejected him before is his total lack of ideology. When I was first elected to the House of Commons in 2005, the first person who invited me to the tea room was Tony Benn, the great late Tony Benn, and he said to me what he said in his book: there are two types of politicians. There are the signposts who show one direction, and then there are the weathercocks that spin around depending on what public opinion is. And I'm afraid Andy Burnham has been a Brownite, he's been a Blairite, and it's that constant flip-flopping and the lack of real ideological zest and zealotry as to how he's going to get this country back on track.
Ideologues are dangerous, though, aren't they? Or they can be.
Well, I think you need to have some form of ideological belief as to how this country is going to sustain itself. I come from Poland, which was a basket case when I was born. Total poverty, abject poverty, rationing for petrol, no food in the shops. Poland is on course to overtake the United Kingdom as an economy. And one of the reasons the Poles are investing in infrastructure, in jobs, in defence. They're on 5% now of GDP on defence. One of the reasons the Poles can do this is because they don't spend £333 billion a year on welfare. And I think what you need to do as a commentator is to analyse all countries around Europe and around the world that have similar populations to ourselves, and then compare and contrast how much they spent in welfare and how much the United Kingdom.
Well, we've been talking about that in the last hour. But Luke, can I put Daniel's question to you? Because, I mean, one of the criticisms of Keir Starmer was that he didn't really have any ideological groundings. People didn't really know what he believed. And people are now saying that about Andy Burnham as well. Isn't that a danger?
Well, I think, look, he's had 9 years as Greater Manchester Mayor, and I think he's transformed the economic fortunes of that part of the world with a very clear ideology. Those public-private sector partnerships, bringing hope back to young people, that parity of esteem gap between vocational and technical and academic routes, and giving hope back to working-class kids. Yeah. These are the sorts of, and using the most of devolution. And you talk about spending, but we've got to make make sure that you work with the private sector. That's how he's rebuilt the Manchester skyline, and it's proofs in the pudding.
The analysis from the left-wing think tank, the Resolution Foundation today, saying that Manchester has experienced the steepest fall in living standards of any other major city since between 2021 and 23. That's on Andy Burnham's watch. It's not, I'm afraid, working for young people. It's not giving them jobs. The people in Manchester are really struggling, and they've struggled under Andy Burnham, and I'm afraid I think the whole country is going to struggle under Andy Burnham if he becomes...
give him a chance.
I'm not recognising this at all. I thought his speech was great. I feel like he is establishing who he is, what he's about. I feel like people feel like he's quite relatable. He has got a great reputation as Manchester mayor, and the problem with Keir Starmer was twofold for me. I felt like, and sadly, it does matter, his comms just didn't cut through. You didn't feel like you knew where he stood on certain things. And then as a human rights lawyer, Gaza was a massive issue for people like me and for people on the left. And I think Andy Burnham is already trying to come out and...
Can I just remind you that in 2015, when he ran for the leadership, he was asked a question, and he said Israel would be the first country that he would visit as Labour leader.
Yeah, he did. And of course, I know the history goes back decades, but I think it's a little unfair. Like, a lot has happened.
If it was just one issue, you're right. It would be unfair.
Yeah.
But this is issue after issue after issue. He talks about doesn't want any more private sector involvement in the NHS. He's the only health secretary to have proposed privatising a hospital.
Yes, but he also did come out and ask for a ceasefire at the same time as Sadiq Khan, which was a long time ago. It wasn't that, in terms of what happened after October the 7th, and sort of went under the radar, whereas Sadiq Khan got a lot of criticism at the time. So I think let's give him a chance.
Yes, but there's one thing that remains. The elephant in the room is that we have not been able to, in my lifetime, apart from Margaret Thatcher, we have not been able to pay for ourselves as a country. And we've been borrowing money every single year for the last 50 years. We're now at 2.7 trillion in debt, with debt interest payments this year of 130 billion. And interestingly, I was speaking to Claire Coutinho, the Shadow Energy Secretary, and I said, tell me, how much revenue does the Exchequer lose every year from the North Sea not operating at full capacity? And she said it was £25 billion. These are the sort of decisions that the Labour Party have made to close off our North Sea oil production. So instead, we're buying our own oil from the Norwegians, rather than drilling for it.
Do you see how hot it is today? Just question. A bit of cognitive dissonance.
I just believe in protecting the economy and jobs, because the United Kingdom only represents less than 1% of total global CO2 emissions.
Let's not divert onto that, but let's just finish off this discussion by asking, the job of Prime Minister, if you look back go back 6 or 7 or 8 or however many you want to go, a lot of people think it's an impossible job to do. Do you think that in 6 months' time, maybe after Andy Burnham has had to face a real crisis, maybe has made a mistake somewhere, that Labour backbenchers are going to think, bring back Keir Starmer? It's possible, isn't it, Luke?
Well, I don't for the reason that that optimism today. But don't forget, Andy was Chief Secretary of the Treasury during the global financial crisis. He was Health Secretary during a swine flu issue. And then there was also his 9 years as Mayor. He's been out of the system. He's been in the system. He's got a bird's eye view of what's gone wrong. And actually, we've got to start rewiring, getting power out of Whitehall. If it stays in Whitehall, it'd be very easy for him to say, as a new Prime Minister, suck all of the power into number 10 in London and all of the Whitehall, Westminster departments. He's about transferring that power out to transfer decision-making out as a region.
How much is that going to cost the taxpayer?
That is like moving the deck chairs on the Titanic, quite frankly, whether it's in Westminster or whether it's in Manchester. The fact remains that I think we have the largest exodus of millionaires from this country compared to any other country in the world. So we've got
China is number one.
Well, we're number two. Yeah. So we are the second country in the world where we see an exodus of all these millionaires because they cannot operate. I've got some wonderful friends from university, multimillionaires, and I said, why have you gone to Dubai? Why are you operating in Dubai? He said, Kavchinsky, you're a politician. You've got to think about the country. I've got to think about my family and about my employees. And I pay 10% tax in Abu Dhabi. Can you match that? Of course we can't. And until we get our economy back to competitive levels of taxation, we will just continue to be managing decline.
Right, we will move on. Although I see the next question is also about Andy Burnham. It's 18 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
Vodafone is backing the UK with an £11 billion investment to make the nation's biggest network even better.
Fair play, that's a big commitment.
So you can launch that business.
So I can start selling my model trains in Pwllheli.
Multitask in a haze of glory.
I could stream Wimbledon whilst on a video call.
Start doing more of what you love from more places. Opportunity awaits. Switch to Vodafone today on the nation's network.
Nation's network means UK's biggest network through Vodafone 3 merger based on mobile sites versus major providers. Network improvements by 2034. See vodafone.co.uk/TNN, subject to coverage.
Up to speed.
Your Formula One podcast. Round 10 is the iconic Spa circuit in Belgium.
New episodes every Monday and Thursday on YouTube or Global Player.
Aha! Shiver me timbers! To the high seas! There's treasure and adventure across them waters!
Stop rocking the boat, Dad. You're making my feet wet.
Oh, sorry.
Explore Rye Pirates and Smugglers Day with kids' train tickets for £2 on off-peak journeys. Southern Railway, where every stop is a story. Terms apply.
When your daughter's wedding guest list is double-sided, enjoy every hand-clapping second of it. Be a step ahead with Barclays Premier, with our best savings rates. Barclays, backing your future. Eligibility criteria apply, T's and C's apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
20 past 8 on LBC. Luke Charters is here, Labour MP for York Outer. Suzanne Evans, political commentator. Daniel Kovczynski, international affairs consultant. And Gemma Forte, broadcaster and podcaster. Right, Greg in Bristol says, is Andy Burnham right to apologise for Labour's approach to Gaza up to now? He's told, this is a bit of background, he's told Labour members that the party didn't get it right and the government have got to do more to put pressure on the Israeli government. He also said that there's increasing evidence that war crimes appear to have been committed, but did not use the word genocide. Daniel.
Well, we were talking about this before we came on air, and I asked, I understand that on the left, the Gaza Strip is an issue of huge significance, but I point out that I think the worst bloodbath in the world at the moment is in Sudan. And this is a country that I've visited on many occasions, and particularly Darfur, and I have been horrified by the brutality, the murder, the killing, the slaughter, the genocide, what's going on in Sudan, which is also a former British colony and protectorate. Yes, I understand the sensitivities, but I just worry about this disproportionate focus on the Gaza Strip, which perhaps leads to our own media commentators and demonstrations in the street not also taking into consideration other critical human rights abuses.
But that's just whataboutery, isn't it? So, I mean, we can all come up with areas that we think the media, that politicians should concentrate on. Yes, but you can't deny that the whole Gaza issue does, particularly on the left, mean an awful lot.
Well, let's say that there are 20 wars at the moment around the world, or maybe even more there could be. How much airtime do they get? My point is that the Gaza Strip, if you were looking at the British media news and the newspapers, I would suspect that the Gaza Strip has a massively disproportionate...
You are right, but why do you think Andy Burnham has said what he's said here?
Well, I think...
Who's he speaking to?
Well, I think Andy Burnham has recognised that, as has been said earlier, that the left of the Labour Party, for them, this is a totemic issue. And Sir Keir Starmer's sentiments on this issue were not sufficiently unequivocal, whereby they could support him. And so I think Andy Burnham has obviously taken soundings about some of the disquiet about Labour Party members. Gaza has resurfaced again, and he wants a new direction.
Well, Gemma, this is not political leadership, is it? It's political followership.
I hope not. I like to think he's got a moral compass in there. I like to think he's been as disturbed by some of the images that we've all seen for years now, and the fact that there's no respite. Ethnic cleansing is currently happening. You can see that Netanyahu and the Israeli government just continue on their mission. Gaza's all but flattened. The UN have now been unequivocal that it is genocide, as have all the human rights charities, Amnesty, so on and so forth. 20,000 children at least killed. And it was also came up by the UN last week. They were saying that these children were also targeted. It is barbaric. And I agree, of course, Sudan, etc., etc., all these awful things happening around the world. But I agree with you, Ian. It's a bit like if somebody says, well, I'm supporting a cancer charity, and then they go, but what about Parkinson's? It doesn't mean that all of those things aren't worthy causes. But Gaza has caught the attention because the human rights lawyer of a prime minister came out on LBC and said, oh, if you cut water off to all these people, like, that's okay. And it isn't. And then supplying weaponry. And then you see this very authoritarian approach where you were seeing old ladies, vicars, blind people being arrested and carted off into police vans simply because they've gone out peacefully to protest what they're seeing. That's my view. And so I think Andy Burnham, I'd imagine he does care. I think he's, a human being.
Right, Luke?
I think he was one of the first senior Labour figures to call for a ceasefire, for many actually, and he should be credited for that. And I actually think the mainstay of British public opinion is with Andy on this, which is to say, first and foremost, that settler violence. No one wants to see that. And that is because most British people want to see a two-state solution. And what's happening with some of these settlements, which has been sponsored effectively by the Israeli state, and yes, it's good that we put sanctions on, is what's happening is that they're boxing off that possibility of a long-term two-state solution. If I were to go up back to my constituency and ask what is a long-term settlement that people want, that is the peaceful long-term solution.
Fine, and I think most British people would absolutely agree with you on that. But it's a problem, isn't it, when the Israelis clearly don't want a two-state solution and Hamas certainly don't want a two-state solution. They both want a one-state solution as long as it's their state. And, I mean, the British government and the British people can say, frankly, whatever they like, but they're not going to have any influence on that, are they?
I think Andy talked about looking at these settlements and where we've sanctioned some of the violent settler leaders in the past. How could we possibly go further, looking at goods and trades and things like that? And I, hand on heart, think that that's where my constituents are at. If there are many people who come to my surgeries that actually see these horrifying images of children and the most atrocious images that you can pick up in.
So you get constituents coming to your surgeries talking about this?
Yeah, it's actually in my part of the world, it's one of the highest number of things that they want to come and talk to me about, because they're seeing the British people are very receptive when it comes to injustice, and they've seen this for years, and they've seen the incitement of violence continue. And I think it's absolutely right that Andy's shown leadership, building on what he did in the first place, which was one of the first people to say ceasefire.
Suzanne?
So Daniel was accused of whataboutery when he raised Sudan, and I understand why, but it's not whataboutery. It's actually really important. And I think the Labour Party has this huge focus on Gaza and anti-Israel sentiment and doesn't think about the other conflicts going on around the world. And why is this? And ultimately, it comes back to that thorn in the Labour side. It's the ugly head of anti-Semitism. Now, whether you think Labour is an anti-Semitic party or not, and I don't think it is, but I think it certainly has anti-Semites within it. And I think they are a very, very powerful lobby. And for me,
Even now.
And this, I think, is going to make things even worse again. So the question from Greg was, did he get... Andy Burnham's talking about he didn't get it right. He wants to put more pressure on the Israeli government. And it's always about pressure on the Israeli government. Well, I'd like to say to you, Andy Burnham, what pressure are you going to put on Hamas? What pressure are you going to put to stop executing your own people, that you can be sure there will never be another atrocity like October the 7th? When are you going to stop thinking and believing and spreading propaganda that Israel is a rogue state that should be wiped off the planet? Because that's what Hamas believes. It's all very nice talking about a two-state solution. And yeah, that would be lovely. But it's not going to happen while Hamas and other groups like them are in existence and want Israel completely...
Do you think Israel have gone too far?
I have visited Israel. I've not been to Gaza, but I've been to the West Bank.
No, I mean, knowing that 20,000 children have been killed, do you think they've gone too far?
I think anything that happens like that, yes, absolutely. But that was not my point. There are plenty of people making that case. Burnham, talk to Hamas. Then I might have a bit more respect for
Well, he
you.
condemned Hamas. He condemned Hamas, to be fair, and he said tackling anti-Semitism is absolutely a priority.
Well, we look forward to that then. I hope you're right.
Commended for that, and Andy Burnham has been absolutely clear that tackling anti-Semitism is a priority.
And you have to give Keir Starmer credit for that.
Yeah, but this statement that he's made today is not going to make British Jews feel any safer.
I think Suzanne's point is very important in the sense that, yes, a focus on the conduct of Israel is very important, but also, in addition to not just Hamas, but also Hezbollah. Interestingly, we all have different views about President Trump and what's been happening in Iran recently. But as somebody who has been studying the Middle East for decades and visiting those countries, the Iranians have filled the void that we created in Iraq. They were propping up the Assad regime in Syria. They're funding Hezbollah in Lebanon. They're funding Hamas in the Gaza Strip. They're funding and supplying the Houthi rebels with Scud missiles. This is a country which is getting totally out of control and destabilizing the whole of the region. And we've got to tackle this issue at source, which is Iran, because we've got to start to get Iran behaving like a responsible country rather than providing support
perhaps
for
it might
terrorists.
be good if the United States started behaving like a responsible country.
Well, that's another debate, isn't it?
Yeah, which we haven't got time for right now because we're going to move on to a very different subject in just a few moments' time. You're listening to Cross Question on LBC. I'm Iain Dale. Let's get the news headlines at 8:30 with Darryl Jackson.
Labour MPs have overwhelmingly backed Andy Burnham to be their next leader. On the first day of nominations, 322 of them have lent their support. The leader of Restore Britain is facing a huge backlash after referring to the Dunblane massacre as one murder. The party says Rupert Lowe clearly meant one incident after 16 children and their teacher were killed in the shooting in 1996. And Catherine Zeta-Jones says her heart is broken after hearing Bonnie Tyler has died aged 75. The singer was known for hits like Total Eclipse of the Heart and Holding Out for a Hero. LBC weather, a mostly dry, clear night with mist and fog in places, some rain reaching the far northwest by dawn, a low of 12 degrees.
This is LBC.
Want a simple way to earn a fixed monthly income? At ULEZ Prosperity, you buy a ULEZ compliant vehicle from us, rent it back to us for a fixed monthly income, and at the end of the term, we buy it back from you at a fixed agreed price. We manage the vehicle, driver and operations. You simply receive the monthly income. Buy, rent, sell. It's that simple. Get conditions at ulezprosperity.com. Earn a steady monthly income at ulezprosperity.com.
Beyond your imagination. Be amazed. Be moved. Be there. For an experience that will stay with you forever. Disney's The Lion King at London's Lyceum Theatre. Book now at thelionking.co.uk.
Last night, I was watching an episode of Amadeus where Mozart
exploded, launched another Real Housewife during Shiv Roy's wedding night, where she asks Tom for an open
sandwich, Chicago beef filling, cooked by a chef in a
pastel Regency gown. Oh, quite steamy.
Get Sky, Hey You, HBO Max, Disney Plus and Netflix together in one simple subscription. Go to sky.com.
Requires Sky Stream and Sky Ultimate TV subscription. Minimum broadband speed of 30 megabits per second recommended. 18 plus.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
It's 8:32 on LBC. We are in the company of Luke Charter, former, I was going to say, I don't mean former, future government minister, possibly as early as the 20th of July. You never know, Luke.
Well, that's very kind of you. I mean, I'm going to get the train back home tonight and look after my kids, but we'll keep plodding on.
I mean, this is a serious question, and only the normal answer from a politician would be, well, it's not for me to say. But if you had your choice of government departments to work as a minister in, which would it be?
I just like doing my bit for Andy. You know, I'm a passionate, proud Northerner, and
we hadn't guessed.
Oh, well, thank you for saying. But I think we've got to get power out of London and to not just the north, to other forgotten areas.
So head of devolution at the DCLG, maybe.
I think I'll just keep coming on your show for now, Ian.
Do you mind if I just ask, why does everybody talk about getting power out of London? London is the
London needs
I don't
more
live in London.
too.
I live in the north. But London is the powerhouse of the country.
Don't. You live in the West Midlands.
Isn't that, well, some people people think that's the north. And I actually usually, but I live up that way anyway. But, London pays most of the taxes in the country that support the north. I don't know why everybody gets so het up about it. And Andy wanting to move number 10 to Manchester, how much is that going to cost in relocation fees, security fees, travel expenses? It's ludicrous.
I think there's a cost to power being so centralised in this country, and we're an outlier to so many European countries.
It's not centralised, which is why Andy Burnham was mayor in Manchester. But I'm sorry.
This is not the subject of our next question. That was the voice of Suzanne Evans. Daniel Kaczynski, former Conservative MP, is with us, and Gemma Forte, broadcaster and podcaster. Her podcast is called The Trawl. Now, Barry in Great Dunmow in Essex says, is it time for a debate about whether gun laws in this country went too far? Now, the Restore Britain leader, Rupert Lowe, has been strongly criticised for having said that one murder took place in the Dunblane massacre of 1996, which saw 16 children and one teacher shot dead in a school. Restore Britain says he was referring to it being only one incident when he made these comments on the Joe Rogan podcast. Gemma?
I've heard the whole clip and I thought it was really shocking because the context is he was talking about how his dear old dad had these guns and he had to give them up because of Dunblane, and the tone was awful. It really actually genuinely repulsed me. And I was like, you must remember Dunblane, like you're old enough. And it was horrific. It was absolutely disgusting. And I actually feel really proud that in that moment, the government just went, right, that's it. We get rid, and we're very strong on it. And so therefore, there hasn't been another incident like that ever since, whereas if you live in the States, obviously those kinds of incidents happen all the time, children getting killed in schools.
To be fair to Rupert Lowe, which is not a phrase I often use, he could have been referring to it as an incident rather than just a single murder, couldn't he? Let's be fair to him.
He might have done, absolutely. And we all make slips of the tongue and we all say, make sort of verbal mistakes. But it was accompanied with the sort of tone and how flippant he was about it and about how he was sort of like, oh, poor old dad had to give up his pistol. I was just like, ugh. Personally.
Again, I'm going to have a slight sympathy with that in the sense that my dad, we grew up on a farm. My dad had guns and found it a complete outrage that the government should interfere and effectively make him give up his guns.
Have any children in the UK been killed in school
I'm not
with
saying,
a gun?
I'm not saying it was the wrong thing to do. I can understand the sentiment.
That's my feeling, is that sometimes you want a government to take the right decision, like a high ground like that, and make sure that never happens again. And if some people miss out and feel sad that they can't do X, Y, and Z, and there might be some shade there or whatever. Personally, I think children going to school and being safe is worth it.
Daniel?
When was the massacre? 91?
It's 96.
Was it 96? Yeah. Well, I was at I went to the University of Stirling for 4 years, which is right next to Dunblane. And I remember going back there during the incident, and the whole of Stirling came to a standstill. It was such a shock for everybody. People crying in the streets, devastated by the massacre that had taken place at that school. And I think, we recently had, from the Brexit Party, their housing spokesman or somebody making disparaging comments about Grenfell Tower. I can't remember exactly what was said about that, and then he was sacked. When you're talking about really heart-rendering issues like Grenfell Tower or Dunblane massacre, as a politician, you've got to be very, very careful what you say because of the raw. I think
you meant reform rather than the Brexit Party.
Sorry, reform. Forgive me. Yeah,
Suzanne.
I don't think any of us are going to disagree on this. I live in rural Shropshire, as you said. I'm surrounded by guns. I don't particularly feel unsafe because it is very well regulated. I think the only point I'd make is I think Rupert Lowe probably did misspeak, and I don't suppose there's anyone around this table that hasn't misspoken in an interview and lived to regret it. I know I certainly have. Ultimately, it's not guns that kill people, and we might not have had children killed by guns, but unfortunately we've had children killed in mass murders in other ways, hit by cars, whatever it might be. I'm happy with the gun laws as they are, and I think they should stay as they are, and I certainly don't take the view that we should all arm ourselves like they do in America.
I haven't listened to the whole thing, which you have, Gemma, but I wonder whether one of the points he was trying to make was that that maybe the laws went too far in, like British Olympic marksmen weren't allowed to use guns in this country. They had to go and practice their sport in other countries, which may have been a little bit of a sort of overreaction.
I don't know. Personally, I feel grateful, like Suzanne, not to...
Look, let me get this. I'm not defending Rupert Lowe. I'm just saying that I think that, and I agree that law should have been introduced. But sometimes when laws were introduced as a reaction to a single event, remember the Dangerous Dogs Act, sometimes they can just go a little bit too far.
Yeah, potentially. But, I heard some reaction to the clip, and there was, the most poignant one I heard was, he's upset because his dad couldn't do X, Y, and Z with a gun. Well, my father lost his daughter. I was just like, as you say, it's just about leadership. It's about understanding that certain things, try and sound empathetic about what that meant for people involved.
Just a little story for me. I lived in Illinois for a while, and I remember doing a road trip across the states, and we went to a Walmart, and next to the gun counter was a bucket of children's butterfly kites, and it's the most striking visual juxtaposition I will ever see. And I'm just worried, to be honest, that the right and far right in this country, they are importing some toxic types of politics from the US and other countries that have got absolutely no place in our politics here.
I don't think I've heard anyone, apart from Rupert Lowe, on the right or far right, question our gun laws.
Well, I think it's pretty disturbing comments today.
Okay. Right, let's go to another WhatsApp question from Nicole in Sutton Coldfield. Royal Sutton Coldfield. If Andrew Mitchell was here, he would be horrified by that. How can we make the disability benefit system work without taking away support from people who desperately need it? Well, as we discussed in the first hour of this evening's show, the interim review of the Personal Independence Payment, PIP, by the Disability Minister, Sir Stephen Timms, has concluded that it is not fit for purpose and that the system to assess people to receive PIP is dehumanising. Daniel, you'll have had a lot of correspondence on this when you were an MP, I imagine.
Well, I go back to my earlier point, which is what the one thing that really upset me about the government, about this Labour government, is that their backbenchers simply refused to acquiesce to any significant changes to the welfare bill. And it seems as if they are content with having a welfare bill of 333 billion last year, which is actually over 10% of our GDP. We are in a Herculean battle of wills with all of these other economies around the world, whether it's China, whether it's Vietnam, whether it's Poland, any other. And we've got to remember how much of our taxation, we're taking a lot of money from businesses, small businesses. They want to invest in employees. They want to invest in new machinery. They want to invest in exporting. But if their taxes are so high, they're going to move to another jurisdiction. And I just want to know for how long will the United Kingdom be able to sustain its position? Okay. Let me just finish on this point. We're a permanent member of the UN Security Council, a situation peculiar to only 5 nations in the world. We cannot even find 3% of our GDP to spend on defence. We've just had a defence secretary resigning because he couldn't get that money. How on earth will the United Kingdom be able to justify her position as a permanent member of the UN Security Council when we can't defend ourselves and we can't defend Europe?
Is it possible, do you think, to reform the benefit system, particularly this part of the benefit system, and reduce the amount of money that we spend on it? Because Stephen Timms, in a quote in an interview today on this, said he wasn't particularly concerned by the amount of money that was being spent on disability benefits.
Oh, I disagree. I'm extremely concerned, because when you're spending 300, I wonder how many countries in the world have a GDP of less than 333 billion. I suspect it's over 80% of all countries around the world have 333 billion for everything. The United Kingdom puts 333 billion just...
Well, a lot of this pensions money. I mean, I'm not sure you're comparing like with like here.
Well, let's get the statistics on that. But at the end of the day, it's 333 billion, which is money which is not being spent on the things that people really want, which are schools, hospitals, roads, etc.
Well, yeah, I don't think we should have any qualms about spending money on the state pension. But look, I mean, we've created, over the generations, we've had a disability welfare system which has been dehumanising. And I've never spoken publicly about this before, but I've got a very close family member that had to go through that process of assessment, and it made her very withdrawn, and if she didn't get her PIP claim through, she would have actually shrunk the number of hours to work. So PIP can keep people in the labour force. That's what it's there for. But I think we do have to move away from this horrific, dehumanising system. Yes, we need to make sure that the assessments are more streamlined, but it will also make sure that it gets support to those who need it. Because, my family member, I nearly said who it was then, I actually had to go to them and say, you really should be getting PIP. And there's a lot of working class people in this country that should be getting PIP, that actually it helps them stay in work. So don't forget that PIP helps people stay in the labour market.
Can you just clear up something for me? Somebody texted me earlier on, I didn't read it out, but they said that MPs are actually not allowed to question PIP decisions. They're not allowed to intervene on them. That can't be right.
Well, I think so. I have a lot of constituents, and Daniel will have as well. I mean, there's an independent assessment process. It's nothing to do with an individual MP that does that. But I mean, I've seen just how actually this adversarial system, if I may use that term, actually puts people into despair. And I think we've got to create a more humanising way of assessing people.
We had a caller earlier on who said she was in a 5-hour interview to get PIP, and she was asked the question, why did you fail to commit suicide? Now, and she reckoned that was not unusual, that these type of questions are regularly asked in these PIP interviews. I mean, you mentioned the word dehumanising. Well, that's the very definition of it, isn't it? Gemma.
Oh, it's such a complicated issue. I think first and foremost, whatever Andy Burnham, I guess, the government have got to do, I think, is every time this comes up, actually reassure people who are vulnerable and living a really tough, painful existence often, and desperately need the welfare state, that's not going to go. Because I think this issue comes up and people get really stressed and worried. And I think so you need to do that. Encourage them first to say, we're not going to take it away from people that need it. And then we can have a really intelligent debate and conversation about where it can be trimmed and where changes can be made and where reform can come in. Clearly, the system is not working very well if people are being asked questions like that. I think the other thing that I've heard a lot is that there are some people who've got a condition that is just going to last their entire lifetime, and yet they'll be spending quite a lot of money on assessing them sort of every couple of years, which seems utterly pointless. You've got the kind of nuanced debate about ADHD. I know for some people it's really crippling, but for most people I know who've got it really, really badly, it isn't. And there's medication, there's strategies, there's all sorts of perhaps support that could come in as opposed to PIP. So it's a minefield. And even though I'll say that, I know there'll be some people going, I've got it and I can't cope without it. So I have sympathy. It's such a broad spectrum of things you're dealing with. But most of the welfare bill is pensions. I think it's about 40%. So obviously...
we'll have to check.
And there's a lot also of people on universal credit who work.
Just on percentages, someone's texted here, Poland spends 23% of its GDP on welfare, double the UK.
No, that's not. Well, who's that come from?
Somebody who's called SH. Well, so you want to shush them?
But no.
Well, and let's not go down there because we haven't heard from Suzanne yet.
So I think it's very interesting that Sir Stephen Timms in this report didn't make any recommendations to the government.
No, he's doing that later in the year.
Is he doing that later in the year? Well, great. It would be very interesting to hear.
Assuming he's still Disability Minister.
And of course, the other problem that we've already seen with this government is any welfare reforms that they try to get through are completely quashed by their MPs who just don't want any reform. So what can you, but the question was, what can you do about it? Because we know there is fraud in the system. We know people are claiming it when they shouldn't be getting it. So what can you do? And I think really I've always said that benefits should be a safety net, not a hammock. And unfortunately, I think what is also dehumanising is when very, very hard-working taxpayers see people on PIP, on other benefits, earning more than they are. And that, I think, is the fundamental problem, that it's got to be, benefits have got to not be more attractive than work. And I think very often they are, and that's a massive problem. And I think that's the first thing we've got to do is stop them being more attractive for work. And also just, I think, invest more in actually rooting out those fraudulent claims that we know exist, because there is court case after court case after court case. It just happens all the time.
Just one point, which is, I remember during the pandemic when constituents were calling me about all the assistance that they were going to get during the pandemic, and they wanted me, they hadn't received their money from the council, then they wanted me as the MP to get them all these money that they were expecting. Let's not forget, it was over £600 billion. We had to borrow £600 billion to pay 70 million people to stay at home for a year and shut down the world's fifth largest economy. That £600 billion is still there, and it will continue to be there in our debt records for the foreseeable future. These are not normal times, and so I'm afraid we're going to have to tighten our belts and reduce welfare in order to get the public finances back on track.
Right, it's 8:49 here on Cross Question on LBC.
This is LBC.
You can now get Sky, HBO Max, Disney Plus, Netflix and Hey You together in one subscription. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, take your seats on your sofas, brew your cuppers and turn your phones to silent. Because the world of ultimate entertainment is about to begin. Sit back, relax and head to sky.com to find out more.
It's starting.
Requires Sky Stream and Sky Ultimate TV subscription. Minimum broadband speed of 30 megabits per second recommended. 18 plus.
Vodafone is backing the UK with an £11 billion investment to make the nation's biggest network even better.
Fair play. That's a big commitment.
So you can launch that business.
So I can start selling my model trains in Pwllheli.
Multitask in a haze of glory.
I could stream Wimbledon whilst on a video call.
Start doing more of what you love from more places. Opportunity awaits. Switch to Vodafone today on the Nation's network.
Nation's network means UK's biggest network through Vodafone 3 merger based on mobile sites versus major providers. Network improvements by 2034. See vodafone.co.uk/TNN, subject to coverage.
At Waitrose, you know you're a food lover when 3 for £12 on a range of mix and match summer barbecue meant not only was the get-together a hit, but lunch the next day and the day after that. Make it a summer to remember with 3 for £12 on our delicious barbecue range, including citrus herby halloumi kebabs, smoky king prawns with a punchy Creole sauce, and juicy British oak smoked beef burgers. Available now at Waitrose, the home of food lovers. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Prices may vary in Channel Islands, Little Waitrose and partners and concessions.
London, the app for black cabs is here. Jump! Get about with drivers who have the world-famous knowledge and know every street in London. And unlike other black cab apps, you'll only pay the meter fare. No booking fees, no surge fees, no it's raining fees, no there's a game on fees. No fees ever. Just tap the app to hail your black cab. Jump, the app for the cabs that made London, London. Download Jump today.
Cross Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
8:51, Luke Charters MP, Suzanne Evans, Daniel Kowczynski and Gemma Forte are with us answering your questions. Martin in Doncaster is on the line. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Ian and panel. Yeah, the question is if England win the World Cup and are given a bank holiday, should it be England and England only given a bank holiday and no other part of the UK? Because Wales share the same bank holidays as us.
What a brilliant question. Everyone's diplomatic skills are going to be on show now. Or possibly not, Suzanne Evans.
No, I'm not going to be diplomatic about this at all. No, absolutely not. It should be England only. Scotland has different bank holidays.
Well, because, of course, Scotland got a bank holiday even though they lost.
Yeah, no, England only, definitely. But I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately.
Do you not?
No.
Oh, ye of little faith. Daniel?
We shall see. Fingers crossed.
Well, I having gone to university in Scotland for 4 years, I remember my Scottish colleagues were always cheering whichever team was playing against England, much to my great consternation and dismay. So I think to give the Scots a bank holiday would be somewhat counterintuitive.
Luke?
I think Scotland has a different bank holidays, but I don't like getting all ahead of ourselves because I think we've got a good track record in these tournaments getting to the semi-finals and finals. But, you know, if we got to the final and it's Spain-France, I think it will be a toss of a coin. I just don't want to jinx it.
You're being uncharacteristically diplomatic there. You don't normally sit on the fence.
It's football.
He's nervous. He's nervous.
Gemma?
I'm going to give a nice socialist answer and say let's share and it should be for everybody.
God. Well, I shall say that if there is an England victory, there should not be a bank holiday at all.
Oh, that's
come on.
a bit mean.
Come on.
We all like a holiday.
think that growth is important. Well, you've just cut a 200th of the economy for a day. That's what it means.
Nobody will be fit to work anyway. Do you know what? I think Starmer might do it in a last hurrah, right? As like popularity, just so everybody go, he was the best Prime Minister we ever had.
I don't think anybody's going to say that, but you never know. Apparently Scotland's bank, I've been given duff information here, Scotland's bank holiday was actually after their win over Haiti. Just on this also, do you have predictions for the match on Saturday, England versus Norway, Daniel? And also, if England were playing Poland, would you pass the Tebbit test?
Yes, I would. I would pass the Tebbit test because my loyalties are to this country. I mean, I love Poland, of course, having been born there, but of course I always cheer England on, and I very much hope England wins. They deserve to win. They really do.
But your prediction of a score?
Oh, England versus Norway. Well, I will predict it'll be 2-0 to England.
Suzanne?
You're asking me to comment on football?
Yes.
I'm really hopeless at football. 3-1 to England.
Well, that doesn't stop Gary Neville. Gemma?
2-1 England.
I'm going to say same. I reckon Harry and Jude will get 2, and then maybe Haaland might just sneak one in.
Yeah, I'm going to say 3-1 to England because I have every confidence. Right, a very short question from Tom in Tooting. Is it time to relax our Sunday trading laws? He doesn't say how he would like them relaxed. I mean, they're pretty liberal at the moment. When I grew up, nothing was open on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Gemma?
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking in what regard? Things open, an hour or two later, isn't it?
If you have over a certain square footage in your shop, you have to close at 4.
Yeah, so they go, potentially, yes. It's not something I've given a great deal of thought to.
Frankly, I don't give a damn. That's what you're thinking, isn't it?
Not really massively. I mean, I guess that whole day of rest thing's gone out the window. We're not that kind of, we're particularly religious in this country. Our economy needs more business. Oh, God, terrible answer.
Luke?
I think there's a balance in there between hard-working people in retail and having a bit of time with the families and things. But I'll tell you what I would do. I do think we need to look at licensing laws, and I think the fact that you can be in Soho, Covent Garden in London and things start shuttering down so early, it's miles apart from Europe, and I think we've got to look at the successes of hospitality in Manchester and radically look at our licensing hours.
And possibly York too.
Well, York, we do have a lot of stag and hen do's and things like that. We have become a little bit known for that. There is a balance, but let's look at some of those nighttime economy zones that work well in Manchester.
Okay, Suzanne?
So I was quite a supporter of the Keep Sunday Special campaign.
No.
I was all those years
Really?
ago. And I think Luke's just said it, there are a lot of people now who have to work on a Sunday. They're forced to do it.
We're in
It was a long, long time ago. And I kind of long for those days when you could travel around on a Sunday and the roads weren't packed and it was all nice and relaxed and nobody had to be forced to go to work.
But you couldn't actually buy anything.
But you couldn't actually buy anything. But that's okay. I think we consume too much anyway. We're always shopping too much. And I wish we weren't, frankly. I think, we talk about net zero and climate change and the environment. And actually, the environment would be a lot better if we weren't buying so much all the time. But that said, like anyone else, I think I was in the co-op down in Swanage in Dorset on Sunday and suddenly we close in 5 minutes. And I was going, what? I've just got here. So it is frustrating. And I think the Keep Sunday Special genie is out of the bottle now. There's no putting it back. So let's just get a whole hog.
Daniel?
Well, as a Christian and as a churchgoer, I really enjoy my Sundays, focusing on God in the morning and going to church, and then spending time with the congregation afterwards for tea and cakes or whatever it is that the vicar gives us. I think for Christians in this country, we don't ask for a lot, but we just ask that Sunday is kept. But
nobody's forcing you to go shopping on a Sunday at 8 o'clock in the evening. But if you want to, why shouldn't you be allowed to?
Well, it's a question of. I think it's a question of trying to teach for the coming generations about the importance of our religion and its traditions. And traditionally, Sunday has been a day which is different to all other days. And we should try to teach young people that in their zest for life, in their determination to earn money and buy things and spend things, that part of the week should be spent reflecting on one's faith and...
Why?
But also, most of us can't do that, depending on the jobs that you have. So I'm like freelance and sort of work here and work there. And both my kids are working at the moment. One's back from uni, one's on his year off. And they're both, one's in hospitality, another one is working somewhere where it's like shift patterns. So... But when we're all together, we do sit around the table, have meals, all of it's not that we're sort of...
Which you can do on a Friday.
Exactly,
or
on a Friday or just whenever it is. But I just think the way a lot of people's lives are geared now, it's not always possible. So it's quite handy being able to go and...
Right. Well, let's go to our fun question. I'm looking forward to your answers on this one. Maeve in Muswell Hill says, in honour of the late Bonnie Tyler, who we will be paying tribute to at 9:30, who was holding out for a hero, of course, who's your personal hero? And you get bonus points if you'd like to belt out a Bonnie Tyler lyric. Suzanne?
I think the hero's got to be my mum. She's 93 now.
Wow.
My father died when I was 6, so I think it's great that my sister and I have had her for so long. She brought us up, I think, really well against all the odds with absolutely no money. And yeah, she's definitely my hero.
Daniel?
Well, without doubt, my husband, Fernando, who has put up with me for 16 years.
Does he hear the drums? Don't get that, do you?
I do.
Gemma?
My dad and potentially Jude Bellingham. Harry Kane. Let's see what happens.
So many questions there, but I'm not going to ask them. Luke?
Mine's probably a guy called Robin Parmenter. He was my philosophy teacher in my comprehensive school up north, and I went on to name my son Robin after him.
Really? How lovely.
The power of a state education.
Fantastic.
That's cool.
I, of course, am going to say Margaret Thatcher.
Oh.
Just to annoy Gemma.
I'm going to sing Turn Around every now and again. There you go. That's my Bonnie bit.
Well, as I say, we'll be talking about Bonnie Tyler at 9:30 with the entertainment editor of The Sun, Grant Tucker. Right, in the next hour, we are going to talk about Saturday jobs, or should we say Sunday jobs as well? Because I think most of us sitting around this table, we will have all had a Saturday job. It got us to understand the value of work, getting into the habit of going to work. But various bits of legislation over the last 20 years have essentially eradicated the Saturday job for many of today's teenagers, particularly younger teenagers. I'm not suggesting that we should be sending kids up a chimney, but I am suggesting that we need to do something to enable kids to learn the value of work. What's your view, and what was your Saturday job as a child? 0345 6060 973. I was mucking out the pigs.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, Andy Burnham's taken another step forward to becoming the next Labour leader and Prime Minister. His leadership bid has been backed by 322 Labour MPs and remains the only declared candidate after nominations opened earlier today. He's just one short of the 323 needed before it's mathematically impossible for a rival to run against him. Luke Charters was one of the first Labour MPs to vote today and told LBC there's hope among the party.
It's been a good but difficult few years for Labour MPs in some senses, but there was unity. It was MPs from the left, from the right, Scots. There was a Cornish MP just behind me in the queue. It was just bringing people together, and that smooth transition, a calm, collected transition to a new Prime Minister, isn't that what people really want?
The MP who leads Restore Britain, Rupert Lowe, is facing calls to apologise after he described the Dunblane massacre as one murder. 16 children and their teacher were killed in the school shooting in 1996. Mr Lowe made the remark while speaking on the Joe Rogan Experience.
As you probably know, they banned handguns.
The 90s, right?
In the late 90s, because there was a murder up in Dunblane.
One murder.
Restore Britain says Mr Lowe was obviously referring to one incident. Donald Trump claims Iranian officials are desperate to do a deal with him to end the latest series of airstrikes. The US and Iran carried out further attacks against each other overnight. The number of patients being cared for in hospital corridors in England increased last month. Officials say the data shows the summer's putting the NHS under just as much pressure as the winter. There are concerns this extreme temperature could hit power supplies during the third heatwave of the year. The National Energy System operators asked for extra supplies from generators to cope with demand. That demand's coming from fans and air conditioning systems, but Energy Minister Martin McCluskey told LBC that people shouldn't be concerned.
We've got a very, very stable, reliable supply of energy in this country, and these are just routine notices for NESO, who are the energy system operator, to do its job in terms of making sure the system is properly balanced and robust. It's just the routine workings of the system, and this is actually the system working the way that it should.
In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down 16 points at 10,472. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.17. LBC weather, mostly dry, clear and cool tonight. Not cool tonight, clear tonight with mist and fog in places, I should say. Some rain reaching the far northwest by dawn. A low of between 20 and 12 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 9:04 on LBC. Now, those of us of a certain vintage will all remember, I say all, obviously not all, but most of us will have had some kind of Saturday job, paper round, evening job, Sunday job, and it sort of introduced us to the world of work. And I don't think those jobs exist to the same extent as they used to. I'm sure there are teenagers now who have Saturday jobs, but I think the regulations on children working are far more stringent than they used to be. I think health and safety legislation has also had an impact here. The minimum wage has an impact too. And I think it's a shame that today's teenagers are, by and large, being denied the opportunity to find out what the world of work is like, say at the age of 13, 14, 15. I'm not suggesting that we send children up chimneys at all, but I think there are plenty of jobs that kids of those age could do where they can be introduced to the world of work and understand exactly what is involved. And I think the hospitality industry could certainly do with people of that kind of generation having part-time jobs. But why do you think that this is not happening in today's world? So I want to do two things in this hour. I want to ask you about your experiences as a teenager of the first job that you will have had. What did it teach you? What values did it instill in you? And what was your first job? What was your first part-time job? Probably on a Saturday. I mean, paper rounds, they still exist, but certainly I get a paper delivered every morning. But it's a guy that I think it's somebody who's basically retired that comes and delivers it in a car. Whereas in years gone by, that would have been done by a 12-year-old. Well, maybe not 12, maybe 14, I don't know. And I think it's sort of part of our national life that has just started to disappear. And I think that is very regretful. Well, the Conservatives have vowed to save the summer job. That's what they're calling it. As they say, Labour tax rises and workers' rights reforms threaten to price a generation of young people out of work. The Conservative Party announced a three-pronged plan today that will allow teenagers to work longer on evenings and weekends while removing red tape for bosses who hire them. Andrew Griffith, Shadow Business Secretary, said higher taxes and burdensome regulations had reduced opportunities for young people to find summer jobs in sectors such as hospitality, retail and tourism. Now, business leaders have repeatedly warned that Rachel Reeves's tax raids and the introduction of the Employment Rights Act have made it more costly and difficult for businesses to recruit temporary staff. Mr. Griffith said that under his plans, a ban on under-16s working more than 2 hours on a Sunday will be repealed. Antiquated laws preventing younger teenagers from working beyond 7 p.m. will also be extended to 9 p.m. to account for later seasonal opening hours. The Tories described current rules governing part-time work for young people as cumbersome, with restrictions on Sunday working making hiring near impossible for employers and pointless for employees. So what do you make of that? Well, as part of this campaign from the Conservatives, some of the shadow cabinet were asked what they did for a weekend job.
Excuse me, Mel, what was your first job? I was a barman in a hotel.
I was making donuts in Tesco's in-store bakery.
Working at Knight's Garden Centre for £1.25.
I picked fruit and I washed dishes.
I worked in my aunt's newsagent.
The waitress in a Chinese restaurant, £4.50 an hour, and I remember spilling rice on my best friend's mum.
My first job was for a high street travel agent.
I was a waiter in a small pub in a small town in Aberdeenshire.
Was serving beer at a music festival, and we all slept on the floor of the tent next door.
Waitressing in a pub in my local town.
I worked in Sainsbury's in West Wickham in South London.
So I worked in my mum and dad's grocery shop.
I was a kitchen porter, doing pot wash.
I was a silver service waitress.
First job was actually in a bakery. It's an experience that every child should have, and that's why we're trying so hard to save summer jobs.
So important to break the catch-22. Young people often need experience to get their full-time job. Can't get any if there aren't any summer jobs.
Hey Kemi, what was your first job?
You know what my first job was.
You see, there's something slightly cringy about that, isn't there? I mean, it was quite interesting to watch. And if you were watching on our YouTube channel or the LBC app or Global Player, you will have seen the video of that. Another reason why you should watch us. But there's also something a bit Andy Burnham about it, isn't it? I'm one of you. I'm just a normal person. I had a Saturday job too. Does it convince you that they've got the answer to saving the Saturday job or the temporary job in the summer? 0345 6060 973. Shazia Ijaz joins me, Director of Campaigns and Insights for the Recruitment and Employment Confederation. Shazia, thank you for coming on the programme. What was your first job?
I didn't have a Saturday job as such, but I did help my parents out. They had a business. I helped them out. But I more than that, I fancied a job at the florist at the end of the road, which never quite happened. I've had a totally different career.
Indeed. So am I right in thinking that over the last, say, 20 years, that employment legislation, health and safety legislation, minimum wage legislation has all contributed to the decline of the temporary job for teenagers?
We've definitely seen a more difficult path for young people to get into work. I imagine there's a lot of different factors, and we shouldn't rule out the levels of responsibility when it comes to education and trying to, strive to do well in exams and all of that sort of thing. But yes, there's lots of things that have also contributed to making it harder for people to give those young people a job in some way, and where the balance of that lies between employers finding it difficult because of some of the reasons you might have mentioned around red tape and all of those things, the cost of employing people, and also, young people sort of might be busy pursuing other things. I don't know, or maybe they're relying on the bank of mum and dad a little bit more. But certainly the role that a summer job has to play, the role that temporary work has to play for getting young people into the labour market is really crucial. And Andrew Griffith is right that we need to make sure that we protect those pathways into work.
They say they've got a three-pronged approach. Politicians always like to do things in three. But do you think the measures that he's announced that they would bring in if they were in government, would they make a tremendous difference? Doesn't it in the end come down to cost? That the current government is putting up the minimum wage for younger people, and in the end, that is going to price them out, particularly of the hospitality sector.
That is undoubtedly a factor. And what we've seen in recent years is both significant increases to the national living wage rate, but also the national minimum wage rate for younger people. And ultimately, on top of that, we have had additional other costs like national insurance contributions for employers. And as you mentioned, we've got legislation coming in now around the Employment Rights Act, which will also add to cost for employers to hire people. So it's really important that the Low Pay Commission, who will make the recommendation around the wage rates for next year, really consider the fact that, yes, it's important that people can afford to live and get a good wage, but it's also really important that they aren't prevented from getting onto the jobs ladder, which if they don't do at a young age, we know can lead to longer term issues. And as the Alan Milburn review has pointed out, we've got a really serious problem with young people not in education or employment or training. So we do need to address this.
And how important is it for somebody to actually get their first job? So it sounds crass to say people don't understand the discipline that work gives you, but I mean, even if you have a job just on a Saturday or a couple of hours of an evening, it does sort of, I don't know, it just gives you something that you wouldn't have had. And I'm not just talking about a wage, but it gives you a sense of what it's like to be in the adult world of work, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's brilliant for confidence, for those social skills. I think lots of people talk about, I don't want to overplay it, but, people do talk about the fact that you had the COVID generation where people were locked inside their homes. They didn't have that social interaction in the way that they need to. And these are all the sorts of soft skills that employers really say they need and they often don't see enough of. So any entryway into the labour market, whether it's through the Saturday job or through the temporary labour market. And as you mentioned, the hospitality sector, lots of young people join the labour market through sort of jobs in hospitality. And that is really important. They need that experience. They need the confidence. And they need to be able to assert some of that independence. And, there's all sorts of mental well-being benefits as well. But definitely employers want people that are more job ready in that regard.
Yeah, and also if you can put that on your CV, it's going to impress a prospective employer in the future that you can actually say, well, yeah, I took the initiative, I went and found a Saturday job, and this is what it gave me. You're going to stand a better chance of getting that job if you've done that than if you hadn't, because you're probably going to be one ahead of your competition. Shazia, thank you. That's Shazia Ijaz, Director of Campaigns and Insights for the Recruitment and Employment Confederation. Anastasia says, I'm curious, what was Kemi Badenoch's first job? Well, that was her little joke there, because she thought that everyone was aware that she worked for McDonald's as her first job, which is why the whistling bit at the end. I can't whistle, so I can't whistle you the McDonald's theme. This has come as a great shock to people through the glass here that I can't whistle. Do you want me to try? That's as much as you're getting. It's 9:15.
This is LBC.
Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And come on in to Classic FM Calm, LBC's soothing sister station. Find peace in the music with Classic FM Calm. Listen on Global Player or ask your smart speaker to play Classic FM Calm.
Chase gives you 2% cash back on your everyday spending.
Every day? Like Monday's train to work?
Yes.
Tuesday's big shop?
Yes again.
Wednesday's coffee treat?
Yes, cash back.
Thursday's lunch, Friday's brunch and Saturday's takeaway?
Yep, and yep.
Super.
Oh, nothing on Sundays.
I take it easy.
Lovely. Enjoy 2% cash back on debit or credit card spending on groceries, restaurants, everyday transport and fuel. Search Chase Bank. 18 plus UK residents. Chase current and saver accounts required. Maximum £20 per month. Eligibility, qualification, exceptions and T's and C's apply.
A message from TfL.
I saw Alicia's photo in my newsfeed. All I can think of is her family. How they're getting on. If they're getting on. I didn't look when I pulled out, and she never made it home. Sounds crazy, but it felt like her motorbike came out of nowhere. But I know the truth. I didn't look again.
Drivers, take another look, not a life. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Get unlimited video calls with vets from First Vet with Pets in a Pickle. For pet insurance policies as unique as they are, visit petsinapickle.co.uk.
McDonald's Taste of the Tournament has arrived. Get the Mexican Chipotle Chicken. 100% chicken breast smothered in smoky Chipotle and fiery Diablo sauce. Now that's what I call flair. The Mexican Chipotle Chicken. Bring it home with McDelivery.
Until the 13th of July from 11 a.m. Fees apply to delivery orders. Price and participation may vary, subject to availability.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
17 minutes past 9 on LBC. I'm just imagining someone in the LBC digital team thinking that bit of Iain Dale not being able to whistle, that'll make a good TikTok video, won't it? That's what they do, you know, humiliate me. Right, let's go to your calls. A lot of people calling in and texting in on this. I think it is a real issue that those of us who were used to doing Saturday jobs back in the 70s and 80s, we actually feel rather sorry for younger generations now who don't have the same opportunities as we do. Let's go to Alex, who's a first-time caller in Caterham. Hello, Alex.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
Very well. What would you like to say?
So I just started my first job. It's a full-time job, actually, working in the summer school that's held at my sixth form. So I started last week, and it's been quite an interesting experience. I've learned a lot. I think it's been incredibly useful.
How old are you?
But I'm 17.
Right. So what do you do at the summer school?
I run activities for the children. So during the day, they have lessons. And then in the evening, I run football with them, basketball, games sports like this.
See, this doesn't sound like a job to me. This sounds like great fun.
No, I have enjoyed it, but that's been quite a steep kind of learning how to work with children and work with colleagues. But Ian, what I think is there aren't really lots of hoops for young people to get part-time jobs these days. I had to, for example, go through 12 hours of online courses because I'm working with children. I mean, I'm working for 3 weeks full-time, so I think it's worth it, but I could see this easily putting me off if I was only going to work for a few hours a week.
What was this course you had to do? What did it involve?
It was all about kind of the welfare of children and kind of their kind of spotting. I mean, I think it's important. It's kind of spotting things like are they happy at home, and kind of spotting signs of any sort of domestic abuse. I mean, it's important, but I'm not sure how relevant it is to me. But another thing, Ian, can I just say, is that before I got this job, I have been looking for a job for a while, and I did actually go to McDonald's myself looking for a job after seeing some adverts from them saying how many young people they employ in the UK. So I went to my local McDonald's and I tried to ask him for a job, and he told me to just look online. And I think, so I looked online, and basically all the jobs on there are really long hours. So if you're looking for a typical Saturday job, you're not going to find it online. I think it's just quite easy these days that people can say, just look online.
Yeah, and it takes the sort of personal side out of it, doesn't it? Because often, if you go into a local shop that maybe isn't a chain shop, you actually talk to the shop manager. The shop manager either likes the cut of your jib or they don't, and you have an interaction with them, and you maybe have then a formal interview. Whereas if you're just told to go onto the website, part of you dies, doesn't it?
Yeah, a few of my friends actually do also have Saturday jobs, as a waiter. I do think, I get the feeling that there are fewer people having Saturday jobs now. I do quite like the idea of doing a paper round, but it's just impossible to find any sort of job nowadays.
Yeah. Well, I think it is so much more difficult in all sorts of different ways for modern day teenagers compared to when I was a teenager in the 70s and 80s. Well, 70s. Alex, thank you very much. Keep enjoying the summer school. Margaret's in Clapham. Hello, Margaret.
Hello, Ian. Great subject. Lovely to speak to you.
And you.
Again. And when I heard this topic, I thought I must ring, because we were talking about that actually the other week. This topic is quite, quite interesting for me. So I'm talking from two aspects. From my perspective, being similar to your age, and from the perspective of my two adult children. Now, I started off with a paper round. My mum was a widow, and I grasped quickly if I wanted to get some money I had to, get out there. And back in those days, let me tell you, if everyone's listening, there was no girls doing paper rounds. It was all boys. And we were always at the back of the queue for our papers, even though we were there first, me and my friend.
Why do you think that was?
Because lady always favoured the boys. Don't know why, she always did. But Iain, listen to this. The weekends when they couldn't get up, because obviously paper rounds are 7 days a week, so you have to get up at 5:30 in the morning. And I full stuff with me, my sports kit, my cooking kit, everything with me, do the paper round, and then continue to school, get there about 7:30. But the boys, obviously, they're not as strong as us girls, they would then become tired on the weekends, and so then she would smile at us. And I would wink at my friend and I'd say, watch this, she's going to ask us to do the extra round. So I would negotiate money and chocolate.
Yeah, but you wouldn't want to have done the Sunday papers, though, would you? Because they would have been so much heavier.
Yeah, I used to have like a trolley rack and put the sack on. 7 days a week, Iain. Rain, hail, snow.
And what did that teach you?
Well, you had to get up regardless. You had to get up regardless. And bearing in mind, I was only in the equivalent of year 8, which is the second year of the high school. So I did it for about 2 or 3 years, myself and my friend. And, we were quite proud of what we did. And it was quite, it was early getting up in the morning every single day. I mean, we were school children, so we didn't actually, we weren't out and about like in the evening. But it used to be a little bit tiring. I used to find myself maybe having a little nod in the evening and then up again. And then when I got to my early sixth form, I went to the job centre at lunchtime, got myself a part-time job. And I just want to say I continued working part-time on top of my main job from my late teens through to my early 30s. So my main career was always banking, and I worked in hospitality, waitressing, which I loved, retail, many shops, sales, residential care, like doing like reception work, all the way through from my late teens, so if you can imagine 18 or 19, all the way through until I was about 30, 31, 32. After, even with my first child, I was still working 2 jobs, my main job, and then I had lots of different part-time jobs that ran like evening and weekends. And nowadays, that's very, very rare, you see. You don't see, because my 2 adult children, when they were in their teens, my son, when he was at college, he was looking for a part-time job. So I encouraged him to join the council. He joined the council, working for the council, Wandsworth Council.
Yep.
And doing a youth worker.
Oh, has the line gone? I think the line's gone. Margaret, no, are you still there?
No, I'm here.
All right, sorry, I thought you'd gone.
No.
No,
Generation 2, it's more complex for them to apply, I think, for, like the young gentleman you were just talking to was saying. It's all online. I think the opportunities are less. So many graduates hanging around in the shops. They're all hanging around in the retail, just working while they're, looking for something for themselves.
But essentially, what it taught you was the value of work. You got the work ethic. You got the discipline of getting up early in the morning.
And independence, Iain. Bought my own car, paid for my own lessons. From the start, you're paying your own way. And we had to pay our mother money. Young people, if you're listening, pay your parents money.
Well,
and then
I never did that.
Oh, we did. My mum demanded £50 a week. This was in the 80s.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
So did you say at the beginning that you were roughly the same age as me?
Yes.
Because you sound as if you're about 25.
Oh, no. Oh, gosh, no. I wish.
No, that's a good thing.
I wish I was.
It's a good thing. Take it as a compliment, Margaret. It was meant as one.
Oh, thank you, Iain. Oh.
Okay, you've pulled. Get your coat.
Hard work keeps you young.
Right, thank you very much indeed, Margaret, before that conversation degenerated any further. Pauline is in Eltham. Hello, Pauline.
Hello, Iain.
Hi.
I'm 67, so a long time ago. I grew up in Buckinghamshire, so my first little job was potato picking. which I only did for one season.
Now that is hard work, isn't it?
It's very hard work, and I can't remember. It was rubbish. It was absolutely, but I couldn't stand the worms. But then the farmer took me on for cherry picking, which I absolutely adored through the summer, before school and after school, in the cherry orchard. No health and safety then. The cows used to come up and push the ladder when you was up the ladder. No health, but I loved cherry picking. But then when I was 11, I got a job regularly in a hairdresser's. I had to say I was 13, though, because that was the legal age.
And how old were you?
I was 11.
Naughty girl.
I know, but I wanted money to buy my clothes and things like that and go to my youth club and everything like that. So, yes, and it gave me... I always wanted to work, you know. I always wanted to work and do something, because now I'm retired and being at home, life is just a bore, to be quite honest. But yes, I grew up working hard, and I do feel sorry for young people nowadays. It's a lot harder for them, I believe.
Well, I think it is. I think it partly depends on where you live in the country. Do you live in the countryside? Do you live in a big town? If you live in a big city, I suspect it may still be a little bit easier. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so in those days, I grew up in Buckinghamshire. I was in Amersham. I'm sure you've heard of it.
I have.
And Little Chalfont around that way. And I knew the farmer, and he gave me jobs. And then I went on to the hairdressers. And then I started working properly when I was 15 in a record shop. My dream job.
Oh, that was always my dream job. I'd have loved to have worked in a record shop.
I worked in it for about 7 years. Yes, and worked my way up to manager before I moved to London, that is. Yeah.
See, I'm now thinking, do I have to explain to younger generations what a record shop actually was?
I know.
See, Tom's shaking his head here. I don't think he's... Do you know what a record shop is, Tom? He does.
Oh, he does, yeah. See, it wasn't an independent record shop in those days, not like when you had R Price and Virgin, all that come out after. This was just independent.
Well, actually, Pauline, you could relive your youth, because vinyl record shops are coming back into vogue, aren't they?
Yes, I know. There's one in Welling, near where I live in Eltham. It's been there for many years, and I could relive my youth, Ian, if I had the energy.
Oh, you're not...
But in this heat...
You're only 67.
Oh, my goodness, that's very old.
No,
when I'm talking about from when I was 11 and my potato picking. But there you go. You go.
I challenge anyone to spend a day potato picking, because it's... You see, strawberry picking is backbreaking as well, isn't it? I used to do that a bit in my youth.
Yes, I know. I've never done strawberry picking, but the cherry picking I loved. But the farmer used to look at my hands when I came down from the tree and see if I had stains all over my hands from the amount I ate.
Yeah, well, that is the problem, isn't it, fruit picking? You do tend to eat most of it. Pauline, thank you very much indeed. Jack says, I'm 19 and I have a part-time Saturday job. It's at a Chinese takeaway, and I've worked there since I was 16. I'm very lucky to have a job, but have tried to get other jobs and have either been rejected or had no response, despite now actually having work experience. I've been rejected by Tesco and Boots. I'm currently paid less than the minimum wage, as my boss cannot afford to pay me more, as minimum wage keeps going up, but higher than its national insurance contributions and income. You do realise that is actually illegal on his part, Jack, but good on you for getting a job. Right, we'll take more of your comments on this idea from the Conservatives. They want to revive they say they want to save the summer job, but this applies to part-time jobs, temporary jobs for teenagers. I want to know what your experience has been over the years. What did getting a temporary job or a summer job or a Saturday job teach you about the world of work? And why do you think that today's younger generations are missing out? Or do you think, no, they're not missing out because we were exploited? I mean, I was paid 10 pence an hour by my dad to muck out the pigs every Saturday morning. 10 pence an hour. This wasn't in 1876, this was in 1976, and boy did I resent it. In a moment, as well as your calls, we're going to pay tribute to the late, great Bonnie Tyler. It's 9:32 on LBC. Daryl Jackson has the news headlines.
322 Labour MPs have formally backed Andy Burnham to be the next party leader on the first day of nominations. If no one else enters the contest as expected, Burnham will be declared Labour leader next week before taking office as Prime Minister on the 20th of July. The leader of Restore Britain is facing a backlash after referring to the Dunblane massacre as one murder. The party says Rupert Lowe clearly meant one incident while discussing Britain's deadliest mass shootings on an American podcast. And England defender Jarell Quansah has been banned for 2 matches following his red card in their last 16 victory against Mexico. He was sent off in the 53rd minute on Monday. LBC weather mostly dry and clear tonight with mist and fog patches in places. Some rain reaching the far northwest by dawn, a low of 12 degrees.
Hear every side of the story. This is LBC.
Breathe in and stretch into the next spiritual plane. Free your mind, body, and soul. And now, a battered sausage and chips. Namaste.
Unwind with yoga on Brighton Beach this summer. Download the Thameslink Railway app and save with advance tickets. Thameslink Railway, where every stop is a story. Terms apply.
A spectacle far beyond your imagination. Be amazed. Be moved. Be there. For an experience that will stay with you forever. Disney's The Lion King at London's Lyceum Theatre. Book now at thelionking.co.uk.
Ever notice how some things are just standard? Traffic on the M4, standard. Meetings that could have been an email, standard. But at Aon, our cars are driving the new standard. The new Aon V has rapid charging, standard. Panoramic glass roof, standard. 8 years servicing, 8 years MOT, 8 years roadside assistance, and up to 8 years warranty. Also standard, thanks to our great 8 promise. Search Aon Auto to test drive today. T's and C's apply.
Iain Dale, text 84850. This is LBC.
9:34 is the time on LBC. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I hear of a celebrity dying, somebody that I've really respected and liked, when I either hear the news or see the news, I literally say out loud, "Oh no!" And I did that this morning when I heard of the death of the Welsh power ballad singer Bonnie Tyler, who's died at the age of 75. She's best known for these 2 hits from the 1980s, the all-time great songs. And I saw Bonnie Tyler. In fact, I met Bonnie Tyler at half-time at a West Ham game at Upton Park, and it was obviously over 10 years ago now. And she was performing that song with a new group who had been formed. I can't remember what they were called, unfortunately. And they belted it out at the half-time at Upton Park, and I met her before and after the game. And she was exactly how you would expect her to be. And that rasping voice that she was famous for. Well, let's talk to Grant Tucker, entertainment editor of The Sun and a fellow Welsh citizen. Grant, you live just along the coast in South Wales from Bonnie Tyler. Now, you're a much younger generation than me, but you will appreciate what an important singer she was.
Well, I was lip-syncing every single bit of those songs you were just playing, Iain. And I think everybody in the country, young and old, know those songs. They're brilliant, brilliant toe tappers. You just want to get up and dance and sing along. And that's what Bonnie Tyler did. She injected fun, power ballads. And she's often been called the female Meatloaf because of that raspy voice. And of course, she often did collaborations with Jim Steinman, who was Meatloaf. And apparently, Meatloaf never forgave her for Total Eclipse of the Heart. Never forgave Jim either. He wanted that song. And you know why, because it's just such a brilliant hit.
No, absolutely. But I first remember buying a single in a record shop. We were just talking about that on the programme. In 1976, Lost in France. Now, I don't know if you know that one, but that was a very different type of song. It was almost sort of a country ballad. And she had a very different image in those days. And then she had a big hit called More Than a Lover. And she wasn't one of those artists that had a string of top 20 hits. I mean, there was sort of they came along sort of fairly infrequently. But because of that she had that marvellous hair as well, which gave her a sort of stage presence. And when she did the chat shows on television, you always remembered Bonnie Tyler, partly because of her appearance, but of course partly because of the Rod Stewart type voice that she had.
Yes, and that hair, you must think, it must have taken a can of lacquer for that. Just these huge, massive hair. And I love watching those videos. When I heard of her death today, I immediately went to YouTube and I watched those videos. They are campy. They are fun. But also you've got to remember that those songs were not going to originally be hers, but they ended up being hers and she made them her own. Another song that she did, which I only discovered today, Simply the Best. A year later, Tina Turner did it. That was originally a Bonnie Tyler classic.
Right.
So it's just, I just think the effect that she's had on music is such a huge impact. And particularly now when you think of Shirley Bassey, Tom Jones and Bonnie Tyler, they're the holy trinity of Welsh music. And I know the whole of South Wales is in mourning at the moment.
I thought it was, well, not odd, but her death was the lead story on the BBC 1 o'clock television news today. And first of all, I thought that's ridiculous. But then I thought, no, she is absolutely an icon. And I mean, maybe not. I mean, I think a lot of younger generation, maybe people in their early 20s, may know the Jim Steinman song. And I mean, it's a heartache. Somebody's just put on here, forgot about that one. That's from 1978. George says that was her breakthrough hit. No, Lost in France, I think, was her breakthrough hit.
Yeah, but so her breakthrough was in Lost in France. And then the following year, she had the problem with the voice.
Yeah.
And then when she was recovering from nodule surgery, she screeched and the voice just stayed there. And it was then that she did It's a Heartache. And it stayed forevermore.
It absolutely did. But I just hope that not just Total Eclipse of the Heart, but I hope some of the other songs do actually sort of cascade down future generations as well. And it's not just sort of my generation that will continue to appreciate her music. Grant, thank you very much indeed. That's Grant Tucker, entertainment editor of The Sun, and used to part produce my programme on LBC many, many years ago. Right, let's continue with phone in on Saturday jobs, temporary jobs, and the fact that the Conservatives say that they want to save summer jobs for teenagers. Chris is a first-time caller from Silverstone. Chris, hello.
Good evening, sir. Yeah, things have certainly changed since my time. I'm approaching 40 fast now. My first job was in the summer holidays when I was about 12, and it was ploughing a field with one of my local farmers, Massey Ferguson tractors. And for half a day's work, he used to pay me a £5 note, which when I was 12 or 13 was absolutely amazing. And it gave me a good lesson of what the value of money is as well.
Well, you see, that we haven't talked about that at all, but that is a very important byproduct of this, isn't it? Where you actually understand you've got an income. Are you going to go, as I would do, go down the record shop and blow it all on a series of 45 singles? Or are you going to save a bit? And there are so many different aspects to this, aren't there?
Yeah, there is. I think my first £5 note, when I saw all that £5 note in one go, I think I went and signed up for my Beano membership, because I think at the time it might have been about £5. So
I was more of a Beezer man. Oh,
yeah,
boy.
I don't even know if either of them are still going anymore.
No, they're not. No.
But my second job I had was when I was 16, was working at my local supermarket. And I think this is probably where the biggest loss of jobs is, because when I was working there on a Friday and a Saturday, we could have 8 to 10 of us on a checkout. But that same store now, on a Saturday, will have 1 or 2 people on a checkout, and then only one person looking after 8 self-checkouts. So I think that's where a lot of these young people's jobs have got, and also, of course, with the amount of pubs and restaurants that have closed. There's just not those opportunities anymore.
Chris, thank you very much. Let's move on to Eddie in Ivor. Hello, Eddie.
Oh, hello, Ian. Well, before I get going, I'll just let you know that I do associate with a lot of your friends that you associate with. But
do you?
Before I get onto that...
Well, go on, explain that. I'm intrigued.
I'll explain that at the end, because I rang up about the jobs. And when I was 12 years old, I went to the corner shop and I asked the lady in there, I said, I'd like to do a paper round. And she said, well, you've got to be 13. So she got me a job then at 12 years of age at the petrol station across the road, and I used to go in there on a Saturday and Sunday, and I earned £2, half a crown if I went in there on a Saturday and Sunday cleaning the tools and the workshop. And then on my 13th birthday, I started my paper round, and I did my paper round from 13 years of age until 2 months from my 16th birthday. I was 15, and I used to earn at the beginning 17 shillings and sixpence a week. And at the end, I was earning £1 and 1 shilling, 21 shillings.
Yeah, we should explain 17 shillings and sixpence. That would have been about 80p.
Yeah, it worked. I did work it out, and it's about 25p a day in today's money. And I used to get up my alarm would go off at 5 a.m. and I'd be at the paper shop by 5:30 a.m. and I'd finish my paper round at 7:30 a.m. and I'd be at school by 9 a.m. So I did that for nearly 4 years, and I got 1 day off a year, which was Christmas Day, and I did not miss a single day of nearly 4 years.
1 day off a year.
Mm.
You might as well have gone up a chimney.
I know. Well, I often say to my colleagues, I didn't go to school. I started work going up the chimneys, and of course they laugh and that, but of course I'm joking. But anyway, that's why I rang in, and I do associate, or I think I still have colleagues that associate with you, but...
well, go on, you've got to give me a bit more detail than that.
Well, you associate with BA cabin crew, don't you?
I plead guilty.
Yeah, well, I know a few people that have spoken to me, and right. I'm a BA cabin crew member, and I'm 70 years old in August.
My husband's predecessor was BA cabin crew.
Oh, right.
I won't. It'd be unfair to say the name, but you might have known it. Alan was his name. Anyway, Eddie, thank you very much indeed. Well, that took a turn, didn't it? Right. Bridget says, first job, age 12, fruit picking in Norfolk. Gaza. Not that one. Well, I imagine not that one, but you never know. I had a Saturday job in Woolworths in Oxford Street. I worked in the restaurant. I think I got about £13 for a Saturday. And here is one from Susie, who says, growing up in rural Kent in the 1950s, the entire county was covered in hop fields and orchards. The land around our house was rented out to farmers, and we were all expected to help out with the various harvests. Sometimes we would be paid and sometimes not. And my father also paid us for our jobs like cleaning the car and washing flower pots, etc. If you want a day out, his plants are now flourishing at Nyman's Gardens in Sussex. We were certainly expected to help out, and we also went to local farms to help pick fruit, for which we got paid. It was part of rural life, and we much enjoyed the sense of camaraderie and the freedom. Great text, Susie. Thank you very much. It's 9:45 here on LBC.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Andy Burnham apologises for Labour's handling of the war in Gaza. Is that what you want to hear from our next Prime Minister? Plus, should people suffering with anxiety really have their benefits cut?
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Take summer by storm with Kia. Introducing the new Kia Sportage Storm, a unique limited edition of the UK's favourite family SUV. Test drive the award-winning Kia Sportage today and order yours by the 31st of August to get 5.9% APR representative and up to £3,000 PCP finance deposit contribution. Search Kia Take Summer by Storm. Kia. Movement that inspires. T's and C's apply. Kia Finance. To verify, visit kia.com/UK/favourite.
Lotto from the National Lottery now gives you 2 chances to win with every ticket. So it could be you, and it could be you. You, and then the same you, again. You. 1 ticket, 2 chances to win. New Lotto. It could be you, and it could be you. See website for Lotto changes. Rules apply. Players must be 18 or over.
When your husband's got his heart set on making the doer upper open plan, enjoy every thudding second of it.
Yes!
Be a step ahead with Barclays Premier, with our exclusive mortgage rates. Barclays, backing your future. Eligibility criteria apply. All mortgages are subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply. New Barclays mortgage applications only.
Get ready for even bigger savings in the Hillary's summer sale with an extra 10% off absolutely everything. That's on top of up to 50% off hundreds of made-to-measure blinds, curtains and shutters. Plus, right now, grab our introductory offer of up to 50% off selected brand new roller and vertical blinds. And don't forget, with Hillary's, measuring and fitting is always included. So get window wise and book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.co.uk. Conditions apply.
Guys, gals and non-binary pals, we're Copperfield, the breast cancer awareness charity. This is your reminder to check your chest. Learn how at copperfield.org.
Iain Dale on LBC.
It's 9:48 on LBC. If you just tuned in, possibly you've just tuned in because you're waiting for Ben Kentish. I won't take that as a slight. I'll take 15 minutes. I'd rather have 3 hours of you, but I'll take 15 minutes. We are talking about Saturday jobs, summer jobs, part-time jobs, temporary jobs, and the fact that today's teenagers, I think by and large, are being deprived of having these kind of jobs which teach people about the world of work, the discipline of work, the rewards of work, negotiating skills, etc., etc. Why is that happening and what can be done about it? Kevin is in Leigh-on-Sea. Hello, Kevin.
Yeah, good evening, Ian, and nice to talk to you again. So I come at this from two personal perspectives. Firstly, as a teenager myself in the 70s, as a 14-year-old, I used to do 3 paper rounds before I would then go off to school. So I used to get up at 4:45 in the morning in the newsagents for 5 o'clock, would help the guy list all the papers for all the deliveries, go out and do 3 rounds, and then by 7:30, I'd be off and going to school. And I think that sort of thing taught me a really good work ethic, which has carried me through the rest of my life.
But see, I think a lot of people nowadays would say, oh, it's too much to put on children. They have so much pressure now. They'd be tired by the time they got to school. They wouldn't learn properly, and it's too much for the poor darlings.
Didn't hold me back, Ian. I had a very successful life. I'm 64 years old now, had a very successful life, very successful career, and I just think it embedded that kind of work ethic. Now, I think some people may say, well, maybe you had it in the first place to want to do those paper rounds, and that may be a valid point. But I think the point was that it was available for me to do. Now, the second perspective that I come at from this then, which is why I fully support what the Conservatives are trying to do in this area, is later on in life, I was on the board of directors at my golf club. I used to run the junior section, known as the cadet section, and we had a healthy young junior section at the golf club. This would have been about 30 years ago. And over a period of time, more and more controls, more and more regulation, more and more legislation, more and more child protection, which I don't necessarily disagree with, was just making it so onerous and so difficult to bring the youth and the youngsters into the golf club. But in the end, we just stopped doing it. We said, no, it's too hard. We couldn't get the volunteers. We couldn't get the people to manage it because in the eyes of the law, everyone is a paedophile until they're proven not. You know, it was kind of the mindset of people. So it became so difficult to encourage youth into environments where they can learn from adults and they can learn skills, social skills and all the other skills, that it just stopped doing it. And this is, I firmly believe this is why where we are today with the youth. It's not the youth's fault, it's the adults' fault, because I think we've just made it too difficult for adults to nurture and encourage the youth to come through.
You have summed up my views entirely and expressed them far better than I have in this hour.
Thank you. I'll take that from you.
All right, thanks very much, Kevin. Terry's in Clapton. Hello, Terry.
Hello, Ian. I went to work from 12 years old. Chicken farm, collecting eggs, blackberry picking.
I love a blackberry.
Yeah. No, blackcurrant, sorry.
Oh, blackcurrant. No, I don't like them. No.
Yeah, it's used for dyes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And you were 12. When was this?
I started work at 12, yeah. But, I still went to school, but I liked the money because I could buy things I wanted to buy. My own little push bike, racing bike, do you know what I mean? All those sort of things. The clothes I wanted to buy rather than mundane things my parents bought me. Because that's all all they could afford to buy me, see? Do you know what I mean? So I worked at my car breakers, take the lights off of things and small parts, do you know what I mean?
And how did this experience benefit you maybe later in life? What do you think you learned from it?
Well, I enjoyed doing it, as I wouldn't have done it. Like, you know, I like doing it. The benefit was I could buy things I wanted to extra, do you know what I mean? That was the benefit of it. You know, the clothes I wanted, jeans I wanted, etc. I saved money up and buy things. You know, take me a while to save them up. Chicken farm, car breakers. There's other place I worked.
We can't go through the whole list, Terry. Thank you very much. Lance is in Bristol. Hello, Lance.
Hi, we've spoken before at New Year when I promised I'd publish 3 books. Now, I was a medical student. Before I started, I was a Job's Dairy relief milkman, and I used to cycle to get to the dairy between Surbiton and Sunbury by 3 in the morning. And then another job, because they needed me in Hanwell, I was given a 1.6 Cortina to drive to Hanwell from my home in Surbiton, and I used to do the 2 weeks of the holiday jobs for the milkman. And I used to have to go and learn the books, go round, and then occasionally there'd be boys on the van. And on one occasion, a couple of boys joined me because I didn't have them all the time, and I was fine with that. And then the next week I did a round, and I don't know if you know the milk float. It's a very small cab. You're leaning over it, reading your book, and you've got a little leather satchel with your money in.
I have never been on a milk float in my life.
Anyway, bang, I suddenly got dazed, and I sort of struggled a bit and got round, and I'd got some blood, and half of my tooth had gone, and I had a hand, my right hand had something soft on it, and I found a pom-pom hat at the head of the hair. So 2 guys had jumped me. They'd taken all the money out of my leather pouch, because there was no locked sort of money thing. So you had your notes and your coins for change on a satchel. So, and then, of course, you can't make a quick getaway in a milk float. And this is 52 years ago now, because I'm 70. And so I got back to the dairy, and they put me on sort of desk duty for a week or two till I got over the concussion and things. But you learnt a lot. I met the public before I became a doctor, and all sorts. I also learnt about money, because you had to balance your pennies up to the last penny, and if you were short, it came out your wages. So you had your book, and you might do a loaf of bread and 2 pints of silver and a red and a gold, and you sort of memorize the next 3 houses and run them out. But if you forgot something or put something on you shouldn't, and it wasn't there at the end, it came out your wages. So you learnt about that and handling money, and then you learnt about the good and bad of the public, because you met people that were really nice, and then you had the odd rogue, like the time I got jumped on, which would just, take advantage. So it was quite a lesson in life. And the fact that I had to get up there 3 in the morning to be there and finish sort of late afternoon or late morning, depending how well you did. And I did that, and it paid for my father to be able to send my sister to ballet school at Elmhurst, because he couldn't pay for that and my extra grant, because there was 5 of us. So I sort of helped him pay for her, and I covered my money I needed extra when I became a medical student.
What a great story, Lance. Thank you very much indeed for phoning in. Terry's in Bournemouth. Hello, excuse me. Hello, Terry.
Hi, Ian. All right. I phoned up about Bonnie Tyler, but I'll also tell you quickly about part-time work. I worked in a sign writers in Palmer's Green in London, where I grew up. And one thing it taught me was how to deal with grumpy old men. Unbelievable.
That's why you can deal with me so well.
I wasn't going to say that. But no, it stood me in good stead. I learned how to make tea. I learned how to do, painting, decorating, sweeping, all sorts of things. So I'm all for it for kids.
Now, as we all know, you are... Sorry, my voice is going.
That's all right.
I'm sounding a bit Harry Kane-ish at the moment, aren't I?
No.
You are a Meatloaf impersonator, so I'm sure you don't impersonate Bonnie Tyler, but you know, because of her connection to Jim Steinman, how important she was.
Massive figure in the industry. I've done 5, 6, maybe 7 shows with my daughter actually doing Bonnie. She was doing Bonnie Tyler songs. Went out to Cyprus a couple of times and performed out there as Meatloaf and Bonnie, because they had an album called Heaven and Hell.
Yeah.
I don't think they ever actually technically sang together, but it was all the songs of Jim Steinman. And Meatloaf sang some, and Bonnie Tyler sang some. Very good album, Heaven and Hell, that. But it's a massive loss, and particularly the fact that she was an international star from the UK, from Wales, Welsh Wales.
And she was 75, and everybody's saying, well, that's a very young age to die. But of course, when you and I were growing up, we would have thought 75 was a good old age. But Absolutely. Nowadays, it isn't, is it?
Yeah. Well, I'm just a couple of years older than you, so I'm 10 years away from 75.
Yeah, it's salutary, isn't it? You sort of see people die and you think, well, what if I die at 75? Well, that's, in my case, 12 years away. But then you've got like Mick Jagger still doing concerts in his 80s. Cliff Richard, who I tried to get Cliff to come on tonight because he did a duet with Bonnie Tyler, but he's at Wimbledon.
That's been wonderful. You got to interview him, didn't you? That was stunning.
Absolutely. Terry, thank you very much indeed. Quick one with Catherine in Maida Vale. We've literally got 30 seconds, Catherine.
Well, my very first job was doing a paper round when I was around 12. Following that, I worked in a hairdresser's on a Saturday from the age of 14, every Saturday. It was a long day, and all I got for the day was 7 and 6pence. And a few tips. That's going back to like 1963, 4, 90, around that time.
But you got great experience from it. That's the main thing. We do have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. And thanks for all of your calls and messages this evening and throughout the week. I'll be back on Saturday morning from 10, sitting in for Matt Fry. And then, of course, back on Monday from 7. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Clive Bull. But right now, and I'm very interested to know what your Saturday job